Chapter 1164. Speaking of which, in the air below Yao Mountain, the battle was divided into 3 areas. The one closest to Yao Mountain was the Dalan Temple's Master Yuanwu and Abbess Shu of the Fragrance Cult. Due to accumulated grievances in their early years, they wielded their magic tools to fight. One used the Dalan Temple's famous weapon, the demon-slaying sword, while the other used the Fragrance Cult's inheritance, the Peach Blossom Whip. The two of them fought enthusiastically, urging their magic power to maximize the power of the magic tools in their hands. The demon-slaying sword was more than twice its usual size. Talismans faintly flowed on the sword, flashing with different splendor. The splendor radiated to the edge of the broad sword, turning into a faint Buddhist light. This Buddhist light was like a burning flame, growing by a lot. Looking at Abbess Shu's Peach Blossom Whip, it was no longer a small whip. The entire whip was made of peach blossoms, rolling along the whip from time to time. The whip swam in the air, reflecting the color of blood. It was like a blood-red python, incomparably fierce, causing one's heart to tremble. Although Master Yuanwu and Abbess Shu were peak figures in the late stage of Qi refinement, and were also famous experts in the immortal puppet era, they had never seen such dense heaven and earth energy in their lives, nor had they ever urged the magic tools in their hands to such power. Although the demon-slaying sword and peach blossom whip couldn't compare to ancient divine tools like the clear sky mirror and lightning hammer, they were still magic tools used by Yu Mingxin and Wan Wuxin. Therefore, in the hands of the two experts in the immortal puppet era, it was really a bit like casting pearls before swine. Therefore, seeing such dense heaven and earth energy that was almost like the ancient immortal Tao recorded in ancient books, and the magic tools in their hands also exerting power beyond their imagination, the two of them couldn't control their emotions. And they really felt that their magic power had increased a lot compared to before, and their divine abilities had also improved by several levels. Therefore, when they used it, they also felt extremely inflated, as if they were walking on the edge of a cliff. If they weren't careful, they would lose control of their magic power. Looking at Master Yuanwu, he waved the demon-slaying sword, holding it in his hand like a door knife, directly chopping down. It was an absolute martial art technique. As for Abbess Shu, she even forgot to form the incantation, and only held the main body of the peach blossom whip. With a swoosh, she pulled it out. With a loud rumble, the main body of the demon-slaying sword collided with the main body of the peach blossom whip. The peach blossoms were like splashing waves, flying to various places in the air, and the demon-slaying sword also disappeared in an instant, turning into a sword that was much shorter than an ordinary sword, slowly flying towards Master Yuanwu. However, if it was only the collision of these two magic weapons, it wouldn't be enough to attract the attention of Master Yuandao and Master Shu Qing. At the same time that the demon-slaying sword collided with the peach blossom whip, the Dalan Temple's Master Yuanming's Mola Pearl was like a round moon that was hidden in the sky, suddenly expanding, absorbing all of Master Yuanming's magic power in one go. The expansion far exceeded Master Yuanming's imagination. Master Yuanming was excited, and the incantation between his fingers became more and more obscure. This obscurity revealed his unfamiliarity, and he almost couldn't control it. The Mola Pearl was like a shooting star chasing after the sun, and with a swoosh, it struck towards Master Daoist Hao Feng's lightning all. Master Daoist Hao Feng was shocked. How could he resist such a terrifying power with his current cultivation? Looking at the lightning all in his hand, Master Daoist Hao Feng gritted his teeth, and immediately let go of it, spitting out a mouthful of blood onto the lightning all. After absorbing Master Daoist Hao Feng's blood essence, the lightning all shrank instead of expanding, until it shrank to about half of its original size. Then, it flew in the air, and like a phoenix nodding its head, slightly trembled 3 times, and 3 layers of thin lightning flashed, wrapping around the Mola Pearl. Unfortunately, these 3 layers of lightning were still unable to stop the Mola bead's attack. With 3 puff 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 sounds, the Mola bead pierced through 3 glistening holes in the lightning net and directly struck the body of the lightning all. And this collision coincidentally happened at the same time as the demon punishing sword and the peach blossom whip. The sound that filled the sky was truly earth-shattering. Not only did Grandmaster Yuan Dao and Senior Nun Shu Jing cast sidelong glances, their figures slightly dodging. Their spiritual senses and eyes all looked over. Even the people under everyone's feet, whose heart meridians were already controlled by the weng weng sound of the beating drum, woke up from their stupor. They looked at the two immortal Dao experts fighting in the air with strange gazes. Grandmaster Yuan Dao wielding the demon-punishing sword and Senior Nun Shu Jing wielding the peach blossom whip were in a more wretched state. Their bodies were greatly trembling, their arms were trembling, and their meridians were trembling as they fell to the ground. As for Grandmaster Yuan Dao, who controlled the Molu Pearl, and Daoist Hao Feng, who controlled the Lightning All, were slightly better off. However, their figures were also staggering, traces of blood seeping out of their mouths and noses. This was the backlash from controlling the immortal Dao artifacts. When the earth-shattering sound was heard, the blood-red brilliance in the air above Yao Mountain became even more intense. It was like a pool filled with blood, causing people to feel a burst of vexation in their hearts. It was completely different from the 7 colors in the air above Yao Mountain before. Following the collision of the 4 immortal Dao artifacts, that brilliance also suddenly emitted an even more resplendent brilliance. It was as if something had squeezed its way in. That brilliance strengthened by more than 30%, but these 3 layers were increasingly bloodstained. Ga, a soft sound was heard, followed by Senior Nun Shu Jie's miserable cry. Ah! Who are you? That change suddenly appeared when everyone was looking at the brilliance in the air. When Senior Nun Shu Qing turned her gaze back to Senior Nun Shu Jie, Senior Nun Shu's body that had fallen to the ground had already stabilized. An incomparably fast black shadow leapt out from the crowd of Jianghu disciples who were gradually coming to a stop on the ground. Like an arrow leaving a bow, it shot straight towards Senior Nun Shu. In front of the black shadow, there was also a black longsword that still emitted a bright light amidst the blood-red light, stabbing towards Senior Nun Shu's back. That was not the end of the change. As Senior Nun Shu screamed, an angry roar sounded at the same time. Who are you? Beside Master Yuan Ming, who had landed on the ground, there was also a black shadow. Like the sneak attack on Master Yuan Ming, it silently attacked Master Yuan Ming's back. Master Yuan Ming was very alert. When he saw Senior Nun Shu Jie panicking, he immediately formed a spell. The Momo pearl that was sent flying backwards immediately flew in front of him. A Buddhist light sprinkled down, protecting him completely. Ha ha ha! Master Yuan Dao, who was alerted by the 2 screams, was not alarmed but laughed instead. He flew forward and stood in the middle of the crowd. Senior Nun Shu Qing also had a smile on her face. She flew to Master Yuan Dao's side and waved the plain cloud white flag in her hand. Countless pure white tiny lotus flowers enveloped everyone in the air. She laughed loudly and said, "Fellow Taoists of the Tenryu sect. We've been waiting for you for a long time." The 2 black shadows that attacked Senior Nun Shu Jie and Master Yuan Ming were stunned. They immediately understood that they had fallen into a trap. The 2 of them looked at each other. One of them went straight up, while the other fell down, wanting to land among the Jianghu people on the ground again. He, since you're all here, why are you in such a hurry to leave? As Master Yuan Dao spoke, he waved the demon-subduing pestle in his hand and slammed it towards the Tenryu sect disciple who was flying up. When the demon-subduing pestle hit him, the Tenryu sect disciple's body twisted. In a trance, he left behind an afterimage while his body moved forward another 5 feet. Sakra! Master Yuan Dao's pupils shrank. He seemed to be shocked by the black shadow's levitation technique. As for the black shadow that fell to the ground, although no one chased after him, when his body landed on the layers of white lotuses, he could no longer descend. He could only stand there awkwardly. Is it Garuda? Senior Nun Shu Qing also couldn't confirm. She could only shout in a low voice. At this moment, although Senior Nun Shu Jie and Master Yuan Wu were about to land on the ground, they had already stabilized their bodies. The peach blossom whip and demon-slaying sword in their hands were above their heads. Their faces were filled with pride. Apart from them, all the other masters of the Dalan temple and the nuns of the incense sect seemed to know what was going on. Only Hao Yun, Hao Yu, and Daoist Hao Feng of Between the Clouds and the Water had a certain expression on their faces. They seemed to be rather ashamed. Sakura, this old monk has been preparing for a long time. I've been waiting for this moment. If you didn't want to launch a sneak attack, you might not have fallen into my sect's trap. Grandmaster Yuan Dao smiled. At this time, Abbess Shu Jia, Abbess Shu Jing, Grandmaster Yuan Dao, Grandmaster Yuan Ming, and Grandmaster Yuan Wu were using a mysterious formation to trap the two shadows of the Heavenly Dragon sect. Daoist Hao Feng's figure also landed below. He looked at the two black-clothed men of the Tenryu sect who were surrounded. Just as he was about to speak, he heard a person laugh shrilly. Even if we were to fight one-on-one, you might not be a match for us. Who would care about your ambush? That voice was indeed the leader of the Tenryu sect, Sakura. Moreover, that voice was still graceful, as if he wasn't nervous at all. It was indifferent, as if he was talking to a common friend. Hee, Lord Sakura, if we didn't have this ambush, would you dare to come forward? The person who said this was Master Yuan Dao. His words were true. Sakura was the most powerful person in the world. His cultivation was supported by the secret technique of the Tenryu sect. Not everyone could resist him. However, when faced with Master Yuan Dao, Senior Nun Shu Qing, and the others, he might not be able to win in a single battle. Moreover, the Dalan temple and the Tenryu sect were gathered here. Even if the Tenryu sect appeared, they might not be able to win. How can you guess what I'm doing? This kind of boring array formation of yours is nothing more than a small trick to this seat. Di Shi Tian smiled and extended his body. Like a sparrow hawk soaring into the sky, he charged towards the ground diagonally. The Dalan temple and the Tenryu sect seemed to have a tacit understanding. The five of them should be using some kind of formation. When Sakura moved, Senior Nun Shu Qing and Master Yuan Wu also moved. The two of them approached Sakura's back. The two of them made a hand gesture and the peach blossom whip and demon slayer sword that had gone out of control earlier instantly shrunk to an extremely small size. They attacked Sakura's shoulders from both sides. At the same time, Master Yuan Dao and Master Yuan Ming attacked together. The demon subduing pestle and the Malpearl attacked the other Tenryu sect's shadow from above and below. You! That shadow exclaimed. He had just dodged the demon subduing pestle and was blown by the hurricane brought about by the demon subduing pestle. Before he could stabilize himself, the Malpearl hit his back. Instantly, a ray of colorful light flashed on the shadow's back. That shadow directly spat out a mouthful of blood. His body was hit by the Malpearl and rolled a few times in the air. Following Abbess Yuan Dao's exclamation, Abbess Yuan Ming woke up and roared angrily. His figure rapidly flew towards where Abbess Yuan Wu had fallen. Abbess Shu Qing also did the same. Without hesitation, she waved the plain cloud white flag in her hand and a pile of lotus flowers appeared, piling up below Abbess Shu Jia's fallen body. She also immediately flew over. The five people's array formation instantly fell apart. Following their cries, that black shadow that was standing behind Abbess Shu Jia and Abbess Yuan Wu gradually appeared. This black shadow's two hands clenched into fists. One on the left and one on the right, both of them penetrated the bodies of the two people. His arms were stained with blood as he slowly retracted them. You are the Sakura? Abbess Yuan Dao flew in midair and was abnormally shocked. Following that, he clenched his teeth and stopped his hand seals. The long sword formed by the demon subduing pestle sped up by 30%. With a flash of light, it was about to pierce the back of the Sakura. Unfortunately, at this moment, the Sakura who had just appeared stretched out his hand. A gust of black gas appeared and pulled the previous Sakura to the side. The demon-subduing pestle naturally missed its target. With a pu sound, it pierced that person's left arm and easily chopped off his entire arm. Ah! With a miserable cry, the Sakura, who had fallen to the ground, staggered a few times. He still couldn't stand steadily, and with a plop, he fell to the ground. GGA. Of course, I'm the Sakura. Who else would pretend to be me? The last one to appear, Sakura, laughed sinisterly. He didn't remove the cloak that covered his face. Your Dalan Temple still hasn't given up on your evil intentions. You actually still want to plot against my Tenryu sect. There's also the Aroma cult. You only have 2 surviving abysses and you still want to rely on the Dalan Temple's scheme. If you don't pay the price, how would you know my Tenryu sect's methods? Sakura sneered. When you guys were fighting with the 3 people from the Shindao sect, I already saw the clues. You actually still wanted to set a trap. The grudge between Yuanwu and Shu Jia is too childish. Next time, you have to be more careful when setting up a trap. The 3 spiritual masters between the clouds and the water were extremely embarrassed. Seeing that they were being used as chess pieces by the people from the 3 sects, they didn't know what to say. Sakura spoke again. I'm the number 1 person in the world. You guys are old, and your beauty is waning. It's better to die early. As he spoke, Sakura waved his hand. The people who had stopped fighting on the ground and were looking up at the disciples of the various sects in the air. Suddenly, a few people flew out and were about to fly away. You, who are you? All of a sudden, Sakura also exclaimed, followed by a series of screams. His entire body flew out and directly flew into the air. A jade-like hand was inserted into Sakura's back. This. Not only the 3 spiritual masters between the clouds and the water, even Nun Shuqing, who was holding Nun Shu Jia in her arms, was extremely shocked. Only Master Yuan Dao and Master Yuan Ming of the Dalan Temple didn't have too much of an expression other than grief and indignation. Sakura was indeed amazing, worthy of being called the number 1 person in the world. After he exclaimed, he threw his left hand and a black fog rose behind him. The person who was inserted into Sakura's back didn't hesitate. His thin and small body immediately pulled up and flew high above everyone's heads. His eyes were hale and hearty as he looked at the black fog and the gradually disappearing figure of Sakura. He sighed secretly. Following the disappearance of Sakura's figure, the few black shadows that had just flown away from the ground were also stunned. Just as they were about to change their positions, they heard the thin and small body shout angrily. Attack! Master Yuan Dao and Master Yuan Ming's demon-subduing pestle and mola beads struck out like meteors. They had planned this for a long time and the people of the Tenryu sect were caught off guard. Among them, 2 people were already hit by the 2 magic weapons. Their figures staggered and fell into the dust like falling leaves. However, just as their figures landed on the ground, several people beside them pinched the jade talisman in their hands and several clouds of black smoke rose. The people in the air, the people on the ground, and the heavily injured Sakura, and the others all disappeared without a trace. This. Daoist Master Hao Yun and the others were dumbstruck as they watched the series of unforeseen events in the sky. They suddenly felt that they were nothing more than a supporting role in this grand event. Boundless sorrow rose in their hearts. Until Master Yuan Dao flew into the air, he put his palms together and saluted in an unusual offensive manner. He said, "Disciple, greets Master Tian Gang." The 3 people suddenly realized and didn't dare to be negligent. They flew in front of that thin and small monk and said with lowered brows, "Disciple." Shindao sect's Hao Yun, Hao Yu, Hao Feng, greets Dalan Temple's Master Tian Gang. That thin and small monk wasn't anyone else but the old monk that Zhang Xiaohua saw in the Dalan Temple's sutra depository. Old monk Tian Gang was expressionless as he waved his hand and said, Amitba, don't be so courteous." This old monk never thought that the Shindao sect actually had such a powerful inheritance. In the future, I'm afraid that the 3 sects of the immortal Tao are going to stand on equal footing. Master Tiangang. Nun Shujing was extremely sorrowful. She carried Nun Shujie's body. She had long lost all signs of life. Master Yuanming was the same. He carried Master Yuanwu's body and said sorrowfully, Master. Junior brother Yuanwu. Master, please be merciful. Amitabha, life and death are fated, riches and honor are in heaven. The two of them died because of Sakura. This poor monk also has no power to reverse the situation. What can I do? Master Yuandao's eyes were filled with sorrow and said, Master, it's all disciples' fault for being foolish and arranging such a flawed plan to capture Sakura and the rest in one fell swoop. Unexpectedly, real and illusory and real. We laid down a maze for Sakura and Sakura was also laying down a maze for us. Who would know who was in whose maze? Master Tiangang sighed and said, not only you, even this old monk. Sigh, I was also bewitched by Sakura and thought that you guys were already captured easily and didn't need this old monk to make a move. Therefore, I actually let martial nephew Yuanwu and Nun Shujie fall. This is truly, this old monk's fault. Immediately after, Master Tiangang chanted the name of Buddha again and said, however, subduing demons and devils is a righteous act. Using violence to exchange violence will inevitably have a price. Martial nephew Yuanwu met the calamity with his own body. This can be considered as obtaining what you asked for and not wasting your life's cultivation. With this merit, you will definitely be buried in the Origin Returning Tower and achieve eternal fame. Yes, Master is extremely right. Amitabha. Master Yuandao put his palms together and said softly. Only Nun Shuqing opened her mouth and looked at Nun Shujie's body that was gradually turning cold. She gritted her teeth and raised her head to look at the peach blossom whip floating in midair. With a wave of her hand, the peach blossom whip flew into Nun Shuqing's hand. Nun Shuqing didn't even look at the crowd and flew straight to the east side of Mountain Yao. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote recommendation and monthly. Chapter 1166. Amitabha. Seeing Shuqing Nun fly away without saying goodbye, Master Tiangang sighed. I'm afraid Nun misunderstood. Master Yuandao disagreed. Master, don't think too much. Our Dalan temple is the same as her incense sect. We both lost one person. What's there to misunderstand? We just didn't tell them about the plan to ambush Sakura. This is also to keep it a secret. We can't let the Tenryu sect know about it beforehand. Forget it. Master Tiangang waved his hand. Let's not talk about incense sect. It's a pity that we didn't manage to kill Sakura even after sacrificing 2 lives. We only managed to injure him severely. However, we took the lives of 3 heavenly kings of the Tenryu sect and cut off one of Garuda's arms. Yes, this is all thanks to Master Tiangang's calculation ability. Master Yuandao said respectfully. Master Tiangang looked at Yao Mountain and shook his head. Origin returning tribulation, origin returning tribulation. Only by killing as many people as possible can you save your own life. If you show any mercy, you can only let others take your life. It's midnight, the immortal mansion hasn't appeared yet. Grandmaster Tiangang looked at the gradually dimming bloody light above Yao Mountain and murmured, we haven't even seen a corner of the immortal mansion, yet so many people have already lost their lives. If the immortal mansion is born, who knows how many more people will die. Excellent, excellent. Master Tiangang flew towards the west. Master Yuandao and Master Yuanming carried Master Yuanwu's corpse and left as well. Hao Yun and the other 2 perfected masters stood in the air for a long time. They looked at each other and nodded slightly. Then, they flew down and entered the tent. On the southern side of Yao Mountain, the martial artists who had lost their minds under the blood-red brilliance had long been shocked by the earth-shattering sounds and the unimaginable supernatural powers when they were fighting with the immortals in midair. They all looked up and watched with envy. As they stopped fighting, and the blood-red sky above Yao Mountain began to dim, the fighting around Yao Mountain gradually came to a stop. At this point, everyone gradually came to their senses. Perhaps it was because they were tired, or perhaps, they felt that it was still too early to make a move. They had already stopped attacking and were only vigilantly guarding their surroundings, no longer rashly attacking. But, the battle just now was so cruel. Every blade cut into flesh and every sword took a life. It was not an exaggeration to say that blood flowed like a river and corpses floated for miles. In just a short while, 4 out of the tens of thousands of Jianghu people had died in the chaos. Countless amounts of blood flowed out from these people's bodies and seeped into the ground, without a trace. Looking at the current Yao Mountain, the basket-sized ball of light in the air had already expanded to a radius of 30 feet. The blood-red color of the ball of light had gradually dimmed and was replaced by a faint rainbow color. It was the same color as the one that had appeared in the air above Yao Mountain. Everyone, including Nun Jingyi, was shocked to see Xu Jie's body. She was one of the top masters in Jianghu, how could she die so easily? However, when they heard about the thrilling battle just now and the battle of wits between the Dalan Temple and the Tenryu sect, everyone was speechless. The Dalan Temple's plan to ambush the Tenryu sect was something that Master Changsheng had discussed with Nun Jingyi. Previously, during the Wulin assembly of the incense cult, Nun Jingyi already had a deep fear of Sakra's cultivation. If there was a chance to join forces with the Dalan Temple to get rid of Sakra, Nun Jingyi would definitely not let go of it. However, she did not expect that the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Nun Jingyi did not expect that Sakra had long planned this and took advantage of the situation to injure both the Dalan Temple and the incense cult. This was not all. What Nun Jingyi did not expect was that Master Tiangang of the Dalan Temple was actually still alive in this world. He actually participated in this and actually became the shepherd boy who hunted the oriole. However, since Master Tiangang could become the shepherd boy, then, he would definitely be able to mess up the entire situation before the oriole pecks at the mantis. This way, Master Tiangang would not be able to injure Sakra and kill the 3 heavenly kings of the Tenryu sect, but Master Yuanwu of the Dalan Temple and Xu Jia of the incense cult would not die. Thinking about it this way, Master Tiangang's goal was really thought-provoking. Nun Jingyi immediately became alert. While arranging for the outer disciples to go to the nearest town to buy coffins, she also pulled Nun Shuqing, Nun Shuezhen, Peacock and the rest to discuss through the night. Not only were the disciples of the incense cult discussing countermeasures, the campsites of the Dalan Temple, between the clouds and the water and the alliance of the righteous sects were also brightly lit. Not a single person was resting. It was as if the changes in the strength of the various sects and the response to the appearance of the immortal mansion were all in full swing. The only thing that did not change was that the ball of light in the sky above Yao Mountain was gradually expanding. By the time the stars had faded and the moon had set, the east was already showing the color of a fish's belly. The ball of light had already expanded to the size of 1 li. At this moment, the people of the Jianghu who were waiting at the foot of Yao Mountain had already seen it clearly. This was not some passage to the immortal realm, nor was it some legendary magical treasure of the immortal path. It was indeed a towering, simple and unadorned ancient hall that was surrounded by immortal clouds. As for the expanding ball of light, it was the outline of the hall that was gradually revealed when it appeared from the void. At this moment, it was as if an invisible hand was slowly lifting the veil that covered the face of the hall. Bit by bit, the proud face of the hall was revealed in the sky above Yao Mountain. Speaking of which, it was strange. Earlier at night, the blood-red brilliance shone and the hall was revealed extremely slowly. But when dawn came and the brilliance changed to 7 colors, the speed at which the hall appeared seemed to be much faster than at night. By the time the rising sun shone on the hall in the sky, more than half of the hall had already been revealed from the void. In the distant sky to the south of Yao Mountain, Zhang Xiaohua concealed her body and flew forward rapidly. She used her naked eyes to look at the seven-colored brilliance of the hall that reflected the sunlight. She could not help but feel jealous. The immortal mansion that even Wan Wuxin covets is really a treasure. It's a pity that it appeared at the wrong time. My beta school has not yet been established and there are only 7 disciples who have not achieved anything. If it had appeared hundreds or thousands of years later, even if I'm not here, my disciples would have the strength to fight for the immortal mansion. But now, sigh, I can only go to the side and watch the show. Zhang Xiaohua, who was trying to steal while she was at it, had already landed far away. After changing her appearance, she held a jujube wooden stick in her hand and rode a fine horse that she had gotten from God knows where. She followed the official road and headed towards Ya Mountain. Earlier, when she was flying in the sky, Zhang Xiaohua did not notice the situation on the ground. But now, she was surprised to find that there were not many people on the official road. Occasionally, there would be a few brave people who heard the sound of a horse's hooves. Before they could even turn around to see who it was, they would immediately jump off the official road and run away in a hurry, as if they were afraid of being seen by Zhang Xiaohua. This Zhang Xiaohua did not understand at first, but then she slowly figured it out. Most of the people in Jianghu were arrogant and unruly. They were not people who followed the rules. Now that they were all gathered near Ya Mountain, how could there not be a tragedy of the weak being eaten by the strong? Presumably, this kind of thing had become a common occurrence on the official road. Although this place was still very far from Yaoshan, and there were no Jianghu people on the official road, but, once bitten by a snake, 10 years shy of ropes. This was unavoidable. Sigh. Zhang Xiaohua sighed and could not help but feel emotional. When people in Jianghu saw the strong bullying the weak, most people would sympathize with the weak. But, when these weak people in Jianghu saw the poor people, could they still maintain a humble attitude and conduct? The answer was extremely uncertain. Even Zhang Xiaohua himself could not give a clear answer. Zhang Xiaohua was deep in thought. After riding for more than 4 hours, they finally arrived at the foot of Ya Mountain. There was still some distance to Ya Mountain, but there were already many Jianghu people. There were even many Jianghu sects who had spontaneously formed teams and set up checkpoints on the official road and by the side of the mountain to prevent idle people from entering. It was not clear whether they were trying to prevent the innocent villagers from dying or to prevent the disciples of other sects from entering. Zhang Xiaohua did not want to waste time with them. She hit the people who were blocking her with her cudgel and flew into the air. In a flash, she fell into the crowd and disappeared without a trace. At this time, it was already past noon. The early winter sun shone warmly on everyone's bodies. If it was any other day, they would definitely have crossed their arms. Perhaps they would even squat down and talk with smiles. However, at this time, everyone was holding weapons in their hands. Their eyes were fiery as they stared at the sky. Occasionally, they would even turn their eyes as they carefully observed their surroundings. Zhang Xiaohua landed on the ground. In a flash, she disappeared into the crowd. Then, like the others, she found a big tree and jumped up half a branch. Then, Zhang Xiaohua raised her head and looked at the main hall in the sky above Ya Mountain. She released her divine sense slightly. Then, Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. She thought to herself, as expected of an immortal mansion. This Ya Mountain, the vital energy of heaven and earth is very rich. If any disciple wants to absorb vital energy into their body and set foot on the path of immortality, it will be a good opportunity. However, when he sniffed the air, he was stunned. Apart from the freshness of the vital qi of heaven and earth, there was also a thick stench of blood. Oh my God, I'm scared. Have many people died? Zhang Xiaohua was still some distance away from the foot of Ya Mountain. Moreover, the corpses that had been killed by the crowd last night had already been taken care of. That blood had seeped into the ground. Apart from the smell of blood in the air, it was really impossible to see the terrible scene last night. However, about 20 feet away, beside a protruding slope, the conversation between two people attracted Zhang Xiaohua's attention. Little 7. Can you still walk? A woman's voice asked. Sigh, I'll just have to. Qi Yan, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have come to join in the fun. Little 7's voice was weak. Please vote monthly, recommend, bookmark, and tip. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Chapter 1167. It's okay, Xiaoqi. As long as we are still alive, we can still live in the future. Our Huanfen Mountain Villa will have a chance to make a comeback. The woman called Qiu Yan said softly. You are the best, Qiu Yan. Xiaoqi was touched and said softly, actually, last night. I don't know what happened. I didn't plan to go forward, but it felt strange. Yes, it's not just you. I felt the same. It was as if all the blood in my body was stirred up and rushed to my head. I didn't think about the consequences at all and didn't think about whether I had the strength or not. I just rushed forward. And there were a lot of people rushing forward from behind. We had no choice but to go. Xiaoqi said with lingering fear. The key was later. I don't know what happened. I wanted to squeeze through the crowd and saw someone blocking me. I wanted to stab that person to death with my sword. Don't say any more. Qiu Yan seemed to be very scared. Her voice was trembling as she said, talking about last night. I'm scared. I seem to have killed 2 people too. I killed even more. Xiaoqi hesitated, but it was very chaotic at that time. Who knows who they were? Maybe, at this time. Master and senior brother haven't come back yet, maybe. Qiu Yan said sadly, how about Xiaoqi, we should go first. It wasn't easy for us to run to the outermost area. Let's take advantage of the fact that there are fewer people, to save our lives first. But Qiu Yan, it wasn't easy for us to get here. And that Immortals Mansion is about to come out. If we have the fate of immortals, wouldn't we be able to reach the heavens in one step? Xiaoqi said hesitantly. But there was no hesitation in her voice. Xiaoqi, your legs are already like this, you still think about that illusory Immortals Mansion? Qiu Yan said angrily, can you fight against the Dalan Temple, Fragrance Cult and Between the Clouds and the Water? You saw it yourself last night. The people flying in the sky were all disciples of these 3 sections. They are all immortals. Even Dragon God Sect's number 1 person, Disher Tian, died in their hands. You, Little 7, do you think you can compare to Disher Tian? Sakura is dead? How is that possible? Zhang Xiaohua, who was eavesdropping on their conversation, was stunned. Meng. Is she here too? Qiu Yan, if it was before, you could say that the immortal mansion was illusory, but look at the sky above Ya Mountain. It's an immortal mansion right in front of us. Furthermore, the immortal mansion should only be occupied by the virtuous. Why did the Dragon God sect return in defeat? That means they have no morals. I know that I don't have much innocent blood on my hands. This immortal mansion. I might still have a chance. But Qiu Yan still wanted to persuade him. Xiaoqi scolded, Qiu Yan, don't say, but anymore. You and I were able to survive last night, which is the most powerful evidence that we have the opportunity to seize the immortal mansion. If I don't stay, wouldn't I be letting down last night's battle? Qiu Yan didn't say anything. After a long while, she faintly said, Little 7, this concubine has given you everything in hopes that we can grow old together. If you insist on staying, this concubine will accompany you. Sister Lian, don't worry. I have confidence. I am definitely the master of the immortal mansion. I will definitely lead you into the immortal mansion and announce to the world that you are the mistress of the immortal mansion. My Huan Feng villa will be in this immortal mansion from now on, little 7, as long as you are willing, even if it's a broken cave. I will follow you. Qi Lian sighed. Behind them, Zhang Xiaohua was standing. Her gaze was extremely complicated as she looked at this pair of unfortunate mandarin ducks. Oh, right, according to what little 7 and Qi Lian said, last night, there was a flash of red light that confused everyone's minds. My goodness, what kind of immortal mansion is this? Just as he was thinking, a series of crackling sounds rang out. The immortal residence that looked like it had pierced through the sky above Yao Mountain was now flashing with endless lightning from the parts that had already been exposed. There was also a lot of lightning lingering around the lightning, like a bunch of exploding fireworks. It was quite dazzling. In just a moment, a hurricane blew past. An incomparably ancient aura was emitted from the air and directly penetrated into everyone's hearts. Zhang Xiaohua was even more so. She raised her head in astonishment. The immortal mansion in the sky was now different from before. Although most of its outline had been revealed, they could only see the vague outline and the style of the palace. If they looked closely, they couldn't see it. It was as if there was an egg-white membrane between the palace and Yao Mountain. It couldn't be seen through. At this moment, the lightning was like a pair of scissors that cut through the membrane. Or perhaps it was the sharp corner of the palace that pierced through the membrane between the void and the mortal world. More than half of the palace was finally clear. At the same time as the palace, the qi of heaven and earth came out like a flood. Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to release his divine sense. When he felt a fresh gust of wind blow in from the sky, his divine sense already saw the surging qi of heaven and earth like waves crashing against the shore, drowning his entire body. Bliss, incomparable bliss. Zhang Xiaohua never thought that there would be a day when he would be drowned by qi of heaven and earth. Very naturally, Zhang Xiaohua greedily breathed in through his nose and mouth. The Carefree Heart Sutra instantly activated, and the fresh qi of heaven and earth was like a rush of enlightenment, entering Zhang Xiaohua's pores. However, after a while, the qi of heaven and earth gradually thinned out, like a stream flowing into the sea, very quickly being diluted. Sigh, when will I be able to enjoy the immortal Tao to my heart's content? Zhang Xiaohua thought as he looked at the palace that had already been revealed. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua's heart was burning even more fervently. His eyes shone brightly as he looked at the sky. He saw that the palace was made of an unknown material. It was light red all over, and the style of the palace was something Zhang Xiaohua had never seen before. The round roof was like a semicircular eggshell. However, on this eggshell, there were all sorts of strange decorations. These decorations were very strange. Some looked like earthworms, some looked like turtles, and some looked like little birds. In short, they covered the eggshell. Under the flowing light, it felt as if these decorations were about to move, almost as if they were alive. What? In ancient times, immortals lived in bird nests like this? Looking at this shape, Zhang Xiaohua immediately thought of the bird nests he dug out from the trees outside the Guozhuang house when he was young. It was an inverted bird's nest. The buzzing sound in the sky had stopped since dawn, but at this moment, it seemed to have started again. Not knowing whether it was in the ears or in the heart, Zhang Xiaohua felt as if her entire heart was about to jump out of her stomach. Suddenly, there was a loud whang. It was like the sound of a millstone being moved in the countryside magnified 10,000 times. The sound was so loud that it seemed like it was going to crush Zhang Xiaohua's organs into powder. However, just as Zhang Xiaohua was about to cover her ears, the sound suddenly stopped. In an instant, the entire world was silent. Not even a trace of sound could be heard. The entire Yao Mountain also froze. Everyone was stunned on the spot. After a moment, someone moved, and the entire Yao Mountain seemed to come to life. Everyone seemed to have come to life, and was about to move. The sound reverberated through the world, piercing through the sky. Around Yao Mountain, the clouds that had been leisurely just a moment ago, were instantly shattered. At this moment, the palace that looked like a bird's nest suddenly emitted a blood-red brilliance, as if a lively heart was beating. The blood-red brilliance seemed to swell as if it was breathing. That brilliance was like a spreading ray of light, spreading in all directions wave by wave. Ah! He did not know how the others were feeling, but at that moment, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly felt as if he had fallen into a blood-red vat. Even his breathing became difficult. Just as he was about to circulate his heart technique, a divine sense that was as sturdy as a rock, as vast as the primordial, as majestic as a mountain, as vast as the sea, and as irresistible as the heavens and earth spread out from within the palace. It was as if a god was looking down on all living beings from within the palace. Please vote monthly, recommend, bookmark, and tip. Chapter 1168. The divine sense swept past the crowd rapidly, not pausing on them at all, and continued to travel into the distance. When the divine sense swept past Zhang Xiaohua, it did not stop at all, as if Zhang Xiaohua was a weak little ant. However, Zhang Xiaohua felt a completely different feeling. He only felt his heart palpitate, just like when he saw that huge eye in the underground magma of the deserted island. Yes, the palpitating feeling now was 10,000 times more intense than that. This. Zhang Xiaohua was aghast. Could it be that there are immortals in this palace? Then, without waiting for Zhang Xiaohua to shift his shocked gaze away from the palace, an incomparably majestic aura emanated from within the palace. Instantly, a feeling of insignificance rose in Zhang Xiaohua's heart, an incomparable feeling of insignificance, as if he was facing a god that he should be worshipping. An irresistible pressure pressed down on his mind from all directions, and in the face of this pressure, Zhang Xiaohua naturally knelt down. However, just as his knees were about to touch the ground, the dragon-tiger talisman in his Naiwan palace, which had been motionless all this while, suddenly emitted an extremely resplendent golden light, and a faint majestic aura emanated from Zhang Xiaohua's Naiwan palace. Although the majestic aura was extremely weak, but it had a supreme irresistible aura, and this irresistible aura was able to withstand the pressure. Hence, Zhang Xiaohua frowned, and a resistance came from the bottom of his heart. His entire body froze in place, and he did not kneel down again. Looking to the side, everyone was kneeling on the ground, and some were even prostrating themselves on the ground, not daring to lift their heads. Zhang Xiaohua seemed to be able to hear a voice coming from afar. It was as if an ethereal voice had entered his heart, and the pressure around him suddenly increased by a lot. A loud sound was heard, and another golden light flashed from the core of Zhang Xiaohua's Naiwan palace. A phoenix captive appeared from the core, and that phoenix captive flew one round in Zhang Xiaohua's Naiwan palace, flapping its golden wings. Those slender and curved phoenix eyes gave off a feeling of looking down at the world, as if it could see through everything and look outside. At the same time, the dragon and tiger captives were also flipping around. One was swimming beside the phoenix, while the other was roaring below the phoenix. The three captives seemed to have formed a mysterious balance, and in an instant, the pressure on Zhang Xiaohua's mind was greatly reduced. Then, the true energy in Zhang Xiaohua's body suddenly surged, and his entire meridians seemed to be about to leave his body. A majestic aura that Zhang Xiaohua himself was also charging towards the source of the pressure. A sound of surprise was heard. Although Zhang Xiaohua couldn't see it, he heard it clearly in his heart. Just as the sound of surprise was heard, a feeling of fear came from the aura. Instantly, the unparalleled pressure suddenly disappeared, and in the naked eye, the blood-red color of the palace suddenly disappeared as well. What replaced it was the colorful brilliance coming from the various decorations above the circular palace. Zhang Xiaohua's head was covered in cold sweat, and he felt as if he was about to collapse. He forced himself to stand up, but his legs gave way, and he simply sat cross-legged on the ground. Looking around, everyone was in a sorry state. They were either lying on the ground, prostrating themselves in worship, or lying on the ground. In short, no one was able to stand in one piece. Wang, wang, wang. The sound of the grinding stone suddenly sounded again. Zhang Xiaohua forced himself to look up, and to his surprise, he found that the circular palace was slowly rotating. At the same time, as the palace rotated, more parts of it were revealed in the air. In the next 2 hours, the palace no longer emitted the blood-red brilliance, and the circular palace also rotated to the other side. A square palace, similar to the one they usually saw, rotated in front of Zhang Xiaohua and the others. At this time, the sky was already dark, but under the colorful brilliance of the palace, the entire Yao Mountain was as bright as day, and every detail of Yao Mountain could be seen clearly. Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to walk forward, and still stayed at the protrusion, sizing up the palace from afar. This palace was somewhat similar to the incense cult's Mo Xian Palace, with carved beams and painted pillars, and a majestic palace gate. It really had a great style. However, from afar, it seemed a lot smaller than Mo Xian Palace. However, Zhang Xiaohua knew that this was only because she was standing far away, and the palace was in the air above Yao Mountain, so it looked small. If it really was compared to Mo Xian Palace, it would be countless times bigger. When the palace gate faced the south side of Yao Mountain, it stopped rotating. There was a plaque above the gate, but Zhang Xiaohua was too far away, so she couldn't see it clearly. After thinking about it for a moment, Zhang Xiaohua clenched his teeth and formed a hand seal. His figure flashed to the ground, heading straight for the foot of Yao Mountain. When the palace stopped rotating, a black area the size of the palace appeared in the night sky. This black area was even darker than the night sky, and it could be seen with the naked eye. In this red area, there was a flash of lightning, followed by a series of thunderclaps. After the thunderclaps, the black area slowly shrank. At the same time, the palace that was still floating in the air a moment ago emitted a buzzing sound and gradually descended towards Yao Mountain. After last night's battle, all the disciples of the 4 sects left Yao Mountain. There was not a single person left on Yao Mountain. However, just as the palace was descending, on the south side of Yao Mountain, near the waist of the mountain, there was a sudden distortion of light. The trees gradually disappeared, revealing a large open space. On the open space, there were dozens of disciples dressed in Aqua Cloud's uniform. Among these disciples, there were 2 people holding a half-foot-long brocade cloth. The brocade cloth's brilliance had dimmed, as though it was suppressed by the pressure of the palace. When the group of disciples saw the brocade cloth in their hands shrink, they looked at the palace above their heads and cried out in alarm. They no longer dared to stay on Yao Mountain. Each of them used their qinggong to rush down Yao Mountain and ran toward the camp between the clouds and the water. Although Zhang Xiaohua couldn't see Bai Yanqiu's expression, she could imagine the embarrassment on Bai Yanqiu's face. Less than an hour later, the heavens and earth began to shake, and the ground began to tremble. Only then did the floating palace truly land on Yao Mountain. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua had already arrived near the camp between the clouds and the water. When she emerged from the ground, everyone was staring at the dazzling palace in a daze. No one noticed that a middle-aged man of average height had appeared in front of the camp between the clouds and the water. As soon as the loud rumbling sound was heard, a dozen or so figures flew over from the east and west sides of Yao Mountain. Even more people used their qinggong to gather around Aqua Cloud's camp from the ground. For a moment, the entire south side of Yao Mountain was in an uproar. "Look, there's a flight of stairs in front of the palace," someone shouted, and everyone was pleasantly surprised. They all stopped and looked at the magnificent and gorgeous palace again. Sure enough, at the majestic palace gate, there was a flight of stairs that was only big enough for one person to pass through. It slowly extended down Yao Mountain to the foot of the mountain. For a moment, no one dared to act rashly. Zhang Xiaohua wasn't the only one who knew about the aura that came from the palace. Everyone had seen it with their own eyes. Everyone thought that when the flight of stairs extended from the palace gate to the foot of the mountain, the palace gate would definitely open, and the immortal who had released the terrifying aura would definitely push the door open. However, when the flight of stairs extended to the foot of the mountain, the palace gates still hadn't been pushed open. Instead, the signboard that had been covered by the 7-colored brilliance was gradually revealed. There were 2 incomparably huge words that appeared in front of everyone's eyes. These 2 words weren't ancient words, so no one knew what they meant. They only felt a sense of insignificance in their eyes. On the south side of Yao Mountain, around the palace's flight of stairs, tens of thousands of martial artists stood with their heads held high, silently waiting for something. However, after another hour, there was no change in the palace. At this moment, an old man who was closest to the flight of stairs suddenly stood up. His body straightened, and like a wisp of smoke, he rushed up the stairs. "Li Su, how dare you!" Behind him, Bai Yanqiu and Bai Zhangmen between the clouds and the water were incomparably embarrassed and angry. Li Su didn't turn around. He channeled all the internal energy in his body to his feet and focused on using his qinggong. With a whoosh, everyone came to their senses. They all mobilized the internal energy in their meridians and prepared to use their qinggong to rush up the stairs. At this moment, a brilliance brighter than the full moon rose from the west side of the stairs. It flew at an extremely fast speed towards Li Su, who was about to step onto the stairs. Chapter 1169. As soon as Bai Yanqiu finished speaking, a small awl flew up from the ground. It was Daoist Hao Feng's lightning awl. The lightning awl flickered with electricity as it flew towards the Mola Pearl, forming a stalemate with it. Whoosh! The demon-subduing pestle in Daoist Yuandao's hand also expanded, emitting a faint Buddhist light as it flew to the side of the Mola Pearl. Hee, the Dalan Temple only knows how to bully others. A voice rang out from the crowd between the clouds and the water. Daoist Hao Yu's lightning hammer also transformed into a huge hammer and flew into the air to boost their morale. Amitabha Buddha, excellent, excellent. A deafening Buddhist chant resounded throughout the entire place. A 7-colored circle slowly rose from the side of the Dalan Temple. In the middle of the circle was a cross-shaped intersection. The intersection formed a corner outside the circle. The 5-colored brilliance was emitted from the surroundings of the circle, while the black and white colors were emitted from the intersection. Wheel of Evolution. A cry of surprise came from Shueyun. Just as the words left his mouth, a series of rapid thunder came from the place where the voice came from. It was also a round object with a faint red glow that suddenly rose up. That object also grew bigger and bigger. When it reached midair, everyone could clearly see that it was a huge drum. Although there was no drumstick, faint drumming could be heard from the big drum. And that drumming was actually the sound of thunder. Sky-shaking drum. The deafening voice laughed. This set of ancient artifacts has indeed been obtained by the Shindao sect. But, even if you have the sky-shaking drum, what can you do? Sure enough, although the sky-shaking drum was very intimidating and had a slightly stronger power when combined with the lightning hammer and the thunder awl, it still seemed a little weak under the 7-colored brilliance of the Wheel of Mortal Evolution and the Buddha's light of the demon subduing pestle and the Mola Pearl. What if we add the plain cloud white flag? An old female voice rang out from the incense sect. Then, a small flag flew into the air and unfolded slightly. Countless tiny white lotuses surrounded the sky-shaking drum, lightning hammer and lightning awl, blocking the Buddhist light outside of the white lotuses. Master Shu Qing, you. An old monk wearing an ordinary kasaya flew into the air. It was Master Tiangang who had just chanted the Buddhist chant. What about me? Master Tiangang? Nun Shu Qing also flew into the air and said coldly. This immortal mansion has no owner. Anyone can snatch it. Could it be that your Dalan temple wants to bully my incense sect because we have fewer people? Master Tiangang shook his head and smiled bitterly. Nun Shu Qing sneered, Dalan temple's plan. You set a trap to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. You can kill Sakura and Tenryu's sect's vitality. And injure Tensect's people. You cans the sect's people, and 10 sects ants and Tenryu sect, S sect has. And you can sects, you can S sect sects and use. What a perfect plan. This old woman is full of admiration. Shu Qing, what kind of person is this old monk? How can I do such a despicable thing? Shu Jie's matter was just this old monk's negligence. Last night, this old monk also felt guilty and chanted the Sutra of Rebirth 100 times in front of Buddha. Shut up, Master Tiangang. It's useless to say anything. My junior Shu Jie is no longer here. Even if you chanted the Sutra of Rebirth 10,000 times, will she be able to come back to life? Moreover, Yudalin Temple made the Shindao sect retreat the moment you came. Yet, you rushed forward. Isn't this clearly showing that you're trying to hide 300 taels of silver here? If it wasn't for your Dalin Temple having thoughts of meddling with the immortal mansion, would you have done this? Since you've done this, then the fall of my junior Shu Jie, wouldn't there be a very good explanation? Nun Shu Qing didn't listen to Master Tiangang's words. Amitba. Shu Qing, you are determined to help the Shindao sect? Master Tiangang asked. Yes. Nun Shu Qing answered without hesitation. So it's like this. Master Tiangang looked at the steps of the immortal mansion not far away and nodded. Although these steps can only allow one person to go up, it can't be said that only one person can go up. We can all go in, but who can go in first? Won't that person have a better chance? Master Tiangang. Nun Shu Qing mocked. If the Dalin Temple is merciful, seeing that my junior Shu Jie has already fallen, would they let my incense cult be the first to go up? If my Dalin Temple martial nephew Yuanwu hadn't fallen, this old monk would agree. But, martial nephew Yuanwu also fell with Shu Jie last night. Tell me, can this old monk let you go first? Master Tiangang said faintly. Although this old monk is merciful, but, after all, I'm still a monk of the Dalin Temple. I have to think of the Dalin Temple. Yes, you're right. This disciple also has to think of my incense cult. Nun Shu Qing replied. How about this? We'll all retreat 10 feet away for the time being and discuss in detail to see if there's any way to solve this problem. Master Tiangang said again. If we fight until we're not even in the immortal mansion, won't we become a joke? Nun Shu Qing looked at the two magic weapons that formed a triangular formation in mid-air and nodded. This disciple has the same intention. Master Tiangang heard this and waved his sleeves, retreating backward. Nun Shu Qing saw this and also retreated. Bai Yanxiu had already understood. He waved his hand and everyone between the clouds and the water retreated 10 feet, leaving the 10 feet at the end of the steps empty. But, in the air above the steps, those 7 magic weapons. None of them took them back. Master Tiangang and Nun Shu Qing didn't hide their conversation. Nun Shu Qing even sent her voice out. The people of the Jianghu who had already gathered far away from the steps all heard it clearly. They naturally understood that whoever could enter the immortal mansion first would have a better chance of obtaining it. Last night, because of the appearance of the immortal mansion, there was already a huge massacre. Now, the steps to the immortal mansion were close at hand. Who could still calm down? If it weren't for the experts of the immortal Tao and the amazing magic weapons floating in the air, wouldn't everyone have rushed up? For a moment, the tens of thousands of people on the south side of Yao Mountain were like a brewing flood. On the surface, they were silent, but the undercurrent was already surging in the dark. Not everyone coveted the steps. At least, Zhang Xiaohua didn't think so at this moment. Zhang Xiaohua was standing in the middle of the crowd. His face was filled with surprise and joy. He was staring at the 2 words on the signboard above the palace gate. From the moment the steps appeared and the plaque above the palace gate could be seen clearly, he had been staring at it. The 2 big words were ancient characters. No one could understand them. Zhang Xiaohua didn't know either. But, he had seen it before. It was when he refined the Hao Tian mirror that he knew the two words that appeared on the Hao Tian mirror. The words on the palace gate were, Hao Tian. Could it be that the Hao Tian mirror is related to this palace? Zhang Xiaohua instantly thought and said, if not, why are the two words Hao Tian? And Shindao sect and incense cult both have a part of the Hao Tian mirror. The more he thought about it, the more Zhang Xiaohua felt that there must be a reason behind it. The idea of seizing the immortal mansion that he had thrown away earlier came back to his mind. However, Zhang Xiaohua didn't know how to use it. The Hao Tian mirror didn't record it and Wan Wuxin didn't explain it either. Wan Wuxin wanted to leave the immortal mansion to the Shindao sect and only asked Zhang Xiaohua to bring the news of the immortal mansion to the Shindao sect. He didn't even mention the location of the immortal mansion. Zhang Xiaohua rubbed his chin and thought for a while. Then, he looked at Master Tiangang and the others who were gathered in the camp between the clouds and the water. He thought to himself, I didn't expect the old monk sweeping the floor of the sutra depository to be Master Tiangang. The incense cult's Nun Shuqing's cultivation is even higher than Nun Jingyi's. She should be Nun Jingyi's teacher. Since Nun Shuqing claimed to be Master Tiangong's disciple, her seniority is one generation lower. There's no need to talk about Master Tiangong's age and cultivation. Even if I can defeat Nun Jingyi, I'm still far from being their opponent. However, if I wait for them to kill each other, with Master Tiangang around, this situation won't happen. The biggest possibility is that they will find a way to compromise and restrain each other so that they can enter the immortal mansion together. If that's the case, I can only blend in with the ordinary men of the pugilistic world and enter the immortal mansion. But, in front of the ordinary men of the pugilistic world, aren't there incense cult, Dalan temple, and between the clouds and the water? Even the righteous Tao alliance is in front of them. When I enter the immortal mansion, I won't even be able to pick up trash. As Zhang Xiaohua thought about it, she subconsciously looked at the people from the righteous Tao alliance who were using their lightness techniques. She saw Alliance Master Zhang San standing far away. He looked at the stairs in the distance and then at Master Tiangang who was gathered for a discussion. Finally, he turned back to look at the various weapons on the stairs. His face was terrifyingly gloomy. Forget it. Even the righteous Tao alliance is in front of I. How can that be? Zhang Xiaohua clenched her teeth and secretly reached into her clothes. She secretly took out the Hao Tian mirror from her money pouch. Unexpectedly, just as she took out the Hao Tian mirror, before Zhang Xiaohua could hold it firmly, the Hao Tian mirror seemed to be pulled by a huge force and immediately flew out of Zhang Xiaohua's hands. Oh no! Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. This place was not far from Master Tiangang and the others. Zhang Xiaohua hid her divine sense and cultivation level so that she could take advantage of the situation. Once the Hao Tian mirror appeared, how could it not attract their attention? However, when Zhang Xiaohua reached out to grab the Hao Tian mirror, she saw the Hao Tian mirror somersaulting in midair. The front of the mirror rushed towards the palace gate on Yao Mountain. In an instant, the clear sky mirror emitted a faint white, misty brilliance and shone directly at the palace gate. With a buzzing sound, layers of rippling seven-colored brilliance appeared on the palace gate and passed through the brilliance emitted by the clear sky mirror. The brilliance was extremely swift. Before Zhang Xiaohua could react, it had already enveloped him. An incomparably powerful suction force pulled him straight towards the palace gates. Ren Xiaoyao. The strange movement of the Hao Tian mirror attracted Master Tiangong's attention from the beginning. However, that brilliance was so fast that it did not give anyone a chance to react. When Zhang Xiaohua was enveloped by the seven-colored brilliance, her transfiguration technique immediately lost its effect. She revealed her original appearance of a tall, thin figure with small eyes and a flat nose. Please vote for me. Please vote for me. Please collect me. Please tip me. Chapter 1170. Originally, Master Tiangang wanted to mediate between the Dalan Temple, fragrant religion, and between the clouds and the water to reach a tacit understanding so that everyone would be happy. However, when he saw the seven-colored brilliance in the immortal mansion and saw the protector of the incense cult flying towards the palace gate, how could he not know the reason behind it? Master Tiangang shouted, "Fragrant religion! You've gone too far." He flew into the air and waved his hand. The wheel of divination spun rapidly and was about to catch up with Zhang Xiaohua, who was flying towards the palace gate. Unfortunately, Zhang Xiaohua's body was as light as a feather. Coupled with the unparalleled power of the seven-colored light, when the wheel of evolution started to rotate, Zhang Xiaohua's body had already entered the seven-colored ripples above the palace gate. Not even a bit of splendor splashed out, he had already disappeared. Master Tiangang was not the only one who was surprised. Bai Yanqiu, Liang Cangxiu, and the others from Shuiyun Club were also shocked and they saw Zhang Xiaohua's figure. However, the clear sky mirror was in Bai Yanqiu's palace in Shuiyun Club, and the two words, clear sky, did not appear. She also did not associate the two words on the palace door with the clear sky mirror that she had lost. Bai Yanqiu looked at the fragrance cult with a pensive look. The monks of the Dalan Temple, Master Changsheng, Great Master Changgung, Master Changxing, and the Protector's disciples, Kongchan and Kongju, did not go up. They landed on the ground not far from the Righteous Alliance. When they saw the first person they knew enter the immortal abode, they were all stunned. Master Changxing sighed, "Amitba, Abbess Jingyi. She really racked her brains. She actually still had this trick up her sleeve. Isn't that so? We've already agreed that only the masters of the immortal Tao can fight for it. We're all just spectators. How could she let a protector get it first?" Great Master Changgung was extremely indignant. Master Changxing murmured, "But even if Abbess Jingyi wanted to do something, why didn't she go in herself?" "Senior brother, don't be silly. Our Dalan Temple and Fragrant Religion had an agreement. If she went in herself, wouldn't she be openly violating the agreement? Provoking a war between the Dalan Temple and Fragrant Religion? This is disadvantageous to both sections. It's definitely not what Abbess Jingyi wanted. Priestess Jingyi is the leader of Fragrant Religion. Naturally, she would prioritize the inheritance of our sect. It's normal for Abbess Shuqing to fight for Immortal Mansion." Ren Xiaoyao's move. This old monk doesn't understand. Master Changsheng shook his head. Yes, of course, Master Changsheng didn't understand. Even Abbess Jingyi herself didn't understand. She saw Ren Xiaoyao's figure rising in the brilliance and almost groaned. "Ren Xiao Yao. Ah. Ren Xiaoyao." Chen Chen had already cried out in surprise and almost jumped up. "Ren Xiaoyao. How could it be him?" Peacock's heart skipped a beat and her heart was about to burst out. She lost her composure and covered her mouth with her hand. Abbess Jingyi cried out and couldn't help rubbing her eyes with her hand. She saw Zhang Xiaohua's figure entering the palace gate and said hatefully, "Tenryu's sect. It's really pervasive." Immediately, Abbess Jingyi thought of Master Tiangong's exclamation and immediately woke up as if from a dream. She said loudly, "Oh no, Master Tiangang. He's going to misunderstand." Without waiting for her voice to fall, the rapidly rotating wheel of Yen Fan above the steps whizzed towards the white lotus laid out by Master Shuqing using the white cloud flag. Abbess Shuqing naturally didn't know Zhang Xiaohua. When she saw Zhang Xiaohua rush into the palace gate, she was stunned. But when she heard Master Tiangang call out that person's name and say, "Fragrant religion has gone too far," she thought it must be Abbess Jingyi's trick. Since that person was a disciple of Fragrant Religion, of course she had to protect her. Seeing the wheel of Yen Fan flying over, Abbess Shuqing sneered. "Since someone has rushed in first, there's no need for discussion. Let's rely on our own abilities." As she spoke, she waved the plain cloud white flag and countless white lotuses rushed out to block in front of the wheel of Yen Fan. However, the wheel of Yen Fan was only blocked by the white lotuses for a moment. Then, countless sword-like rainbow-colored lights pierced out from the white lotuses and smashed the countless white lotuses into pieces, turning them into ordinary chi of heaven and earth. The wheel of Yen Fan, which had broken through the white lotuses, whistled and rushed toward the plain cloud white flag in Abbess Shuqing's hand. Dong dong dong. A burst of deafening, thunder-like drum beats resounded. Circle after circle of formless ripples resounded from the air not far away, and rapidly rushed towards the mortal evolution wheel. It was none other than Taoist Master Hao Yun of the Water Clouds sect. He leaped into the air, and with a wave of his hand, he picked up the heaven-shaking drum and attacked Grandmaster Tian Gang. He, you still say. What? This old monk thought you were going against the Dalan Temple because of junior sister. Turns out, you already had a plan. Master Tiangang laughed. Since Master Tiangang, Abbess Shuqing, and Master Hao Yun had already made their move, how could Master Yuan Dao and Master Yuan Ming be idle? The Buddha's light on the Maomu pearl expanded and smashed toward the lightning hammer like a meteor. The lightning all did not show any signs of weakness. Master Hao Feng pinched a spell and countless lightning bolts appeared from the surroundings, making chi la la sounds as they flew toward the demon-subduing pestle that had been slowly growing in the air. For a moment, above the stairs and in the air, there was a burst of light and sound. The immortal Dao experts were using their supernatural powers to fight. Looking at the ground, the Jianghu people had long been waiting for an opportunity to rush up the stairs of the immortal mansion. Zhang Xiaohua being led into the immortal mansion by the light was the fuse that caused everyone's emotions to explode. Now, everyone had the same thought, oh no, someone has already entered first. This immortal mansion is probably going to be taken by this person. If I can't follow closely behind and that person takes control of the immortal mansion, won't I have no chance at all? Now that the immortal Dao experts are fighting, they don't have the time to care about me. Shouldn't I take this opportunity to rush into the immortal mansion? Once this thought appeared, no one could control their footsteps and rushed up. Even if there was no blood-red light last night, once the human nature was revealed, who could compete with it? Disciples, listen to my order. Surround the immortal mansion and use the talismans as barriers to block the people rushing up. Bai Yanxiu saw the situation and immediately ordered. Then, he looked at the elders of the Dalan Temple, Nun Jing Yi of the Incense Cult, and Alliance Master Zhang San of the Alliance of the Righteous Sects and shouted, "Sect leaders, quickly come and help. If our sect's defense is broken, the ownership of the immortal mansion will be unknown." The sect leaders of the three sects naturally knew the severity of the situation. To be honest, they also wanted to rush up the stairs. However, wherever their divine senses went, there were restrictions on the stairs and they could not fly. They estimated that they could only walk up the stairs step by step. Among the four sects, who went first? Well, no one dared to go first. If one of the sects went first, the other three sects might join forces. It was also possible that they would exterminate their descendants on the spot. Containment, this was containment. Looking at the stairs that were close at hand, no one dared to go first. Hearing Bai Yanxiu's call, the sect leaders of the three sects did not dare to be negligent. They turned around and ordered, quickly, send orders to the disciples. All of you, go to the south side of Yao Mountain and assist the disciples between the clouds and the water. You must block the other sect's disciples. Yes. The disciples obeyed and left. Not long after, many disciples of the three sects came as reinforcements. With weapons in their hands, they rushed towards the disciples of the other sects like a tide. Immediately, flesh and blood splattered everywhere and blood flowed like a river. At this time, Yao Mountain was completely covered by the palace of seven-colored brilliance. However, there were no passageways to the east, west, and north. There was only a dazzling brilliance. Only the south side of between the clouds and the water station had a flight of stairs that led to the immortal's mansion. Everyone who wanted to enter the immortal's mansion had to first kill their way through the defenses of the three sects of the immortal's path and the alliance of the righteous path. Only then would they have a chance to set foot on the stairs. Near between the clouds and the water, there was a defensive light barrier last night. However, after being attacked by the crowd last night, it had long since dimmed. In addition, these defensive jade talismans were rarely seen between the clouds and the water. Bai Yanqiu did not have so many talismans between the clouds and the water. No disciple can escape. Yes, disciple obeys. Great Master Chang Gung, Grand Master Chang Xing, and many other disciples who were guarding the Dharma all charged into the crowd with weapons in hand. Between the clouds and the water and the righteous alliance did the same. They sent out the last of their elites. Like fierce tigers coming down from the mountains, they charged into the crowd and killed without restraint. In the time it took to eat a meal, there were countless casualties. Corpses were everywhere. Perhaps, in the past year, the number of people who died in the entire Jianghu was not as many as the number of people who died in these 2 hours. However, the killing did not stop. Those who were still alive and wanted to rush up the stairs kept coming up. The disciples of the four sects were gradually becoming impatient. At this time, the battle in the air gradually came to an end. It was somewhat similar to the situation last night. Although Grandmaster Tiangang and the others were immortal-like existences in the entire Jianghu, their true cultivation was only at the late stage of the qi refining realm. They were not even in the foundation establishment realm. However, the magic tools they used were the so-called primordial divine tools, which were incomparably powerful. But behind this incomparably powerful magic tool was also a huge amount of true qi. They had held back a little in their fight last night, but today, when they saw the stairs and thought of the benefits of the immortal mansion, they spared no effort. They used all the true qi in their meridians, and the magic tools in their hands shone with a myriad of lights. Their auras were extraordinary. The consequences were obvious. After the time it took to eat 2 meals, the true qi in their meridians was completely empty. The primordial qi they absorbed from the heaven and earth was far from enough to satisfy the consumption of their magic tools. Grandmaster Tiangong's face was slightly flushed. His eyes revealed a stern look, and his fingers that were forming a seal were slightly trembling. With 2 poo-poo sounds, both of them spat out blood at the same time and fell from the air. This wasn't strange. The strangest thing was that Master Yuan Ming, who caught Master Tiangang in his arms, also pointed his finger, and the Mao Pearl in the air smashed towards Hao Yu. Hao Yu didn't dodge, and the lightning all rotated to counterattack Yuan Ming. Almost at the same time, both of them were hit by each other. Their bodies slanted, and their hands loosened. All 4 of them fell from the air. Strangely, the falling Master Tiangang pointed his finger and the wheel of divination that was floating in the air suddenly became smaller and faster. Before Shu Qing Nun could wave the plain cloud white flag, the wheel of divination hit Shu Qing Nun's back from behind. Shu Qing Nun also fell from the air. At the same time, the red light in the immortal mansion suddenly shone brightly, and a huge suction force came from the immortal mansion. In an instant, it sucked away all the yuan qi of heaven and earth that had just gathered around Ya Mountain. Chapter 1172. A huge suction force suddenly appeared from within the immortal mansion, sucking away all the energy of heaven and earth around Ya Mountain. In an instant, not even a trace of energy remained around Ya Mountain. Because the energy of heaven and earth was sucked away, the sky was originally clear and boundless. At this time, countless black clouds floated over from afar. Waves of inexplicable hurricanes were born from the 9 heavens, whistling as they blew down. Then, countless floating snowflakes also fell. The hurricanes mixed with the snowflakes, wreaking havoc in the midnight darkness. Only far away, behind the black clouds, the starry sky flickered brightly, as if countless eyes were staring at the astronomical changes on Yao Mountain. The sudden change of wind and clouds, the flying sand and stones were the portrayal of this moment. Countless Jianghu sect disciples were unable to stand firm, almost falling down, unable to even hold the weapons in their hands. The most miserable, of course, was Master Tiangang and the others who were fighting in the air. These people's actions were really puzzling. Not to mention Master Tiangang and Daoist Master Hao Yun. Daoist Master Hao Yun was hit by Master Tiangang's will of expansion, knocking him unconscious and falling into the air. Daoist Master Hao Yu caught Daoist Master Hao Yun. Master Tiangang was attacking Daoist Master Hao Yun successfully, but was ambushed by Abbess Shu Qing with her peach blossom whip. He was also seriously injured, falling down, and was caught by Master Yuan Ming. It was perfectly reasonable for the two of them to be severely injured. It was the result of a normal battle. The other 5 people fell from the air at this time. That was extremely strange. Master Yuan Dao and Daoist Master Hao Feng originally had the intention to retreat, but after hearing the faint sound of the drum and the blood-red light, they boldly attacked again. Moreover, it was a method of mutual destruction. It was really inconceivable. There was also Master Yuan Ming, Daoist Master Hao Yu, Daoist Master Hao Feng, and even Abbess Shu Qing, who was knocked into the air by Master Tiangang. It was against common sense, beyond human instinct. Master Longevity and the others were also the same. Under the light of the blood-red light and the faint sound of the drum, they activated the magic tools in their hands, injuring many people. The hurricane that followed suddenly woke them up. When they narrowed their eyes and looked at the sky, they were all shocked. Although there wasn't a trace of heaven and earth yuan qi, they had long been used to using the levitation technique without heaven and earth yuan qi. At this time, they didn't dare to consider the consumption of qi in their meridians. Master Longevity and the others immediately floated up and reached out to catch the falling Master Tiangang and the others. The Dalan Temple's Master Tiangang, Master Yuan Dao, and Master Yuan Ming were caught by Master Changsheng, Master Changxing, and Great Master Changgung respectively. The Aroma Cult's Master Shu Qing was caught by Nun Jingyi. As for the 3 reverends between the clouds and the water, they were out of luck. It wasn't that Bai Yanqiu didn't have sharp eyes and quick hands, and it wasn't that he didn't pay attention to the battle in the sky. The foundation of Between the Clouds and the Water was the shallowest among the 3 immortal sections. The battle in the sky was of course the key to whether or not Between the Clouds and the Water could enter the immortal mansion first. Therefore, Bai Yanqiu's mentality was still different from that of Nun Jingyi and Master Longevity. Even when he commanded his disciples to resist the attacks of the various sects in Jianghu, he still put most of his attention in the sky. Seeing the 3 reverends that he relied on as a shield falling from the sky, Bai Yanqiu turned pale with fright. Just as he raised his head, he was shocked by everything in front of him. He couldn't help but be dumbfounded. After a long while, he slowly regained his senses. He had seen Misty School's ethereal palace, Incense Cult's Mo Xian Palace and Huayu Palace, but those so-called palaces, compared to the immortal mansion in front of him, were really too simple. Too small. Zhang Xiaohua also saw the exterior of the immortal mansion at the foot of Ya Mountain. He didn't think it was that big, but when he stood in the immortal mansion himself, he realized how majestic this immortal mansion was. In front of Zhang Xiaohua was an extremely wide passage made of purple jade. The jade in the passage looked like a piece of land without any gaps. The jade passage was about 1,000 feet long. At the end of the passage was a huge palace that was 1,000 feet tall. This palace was like the top of a pagoda. From Zhang Xiaohua's angle, he could only see a little of the decoration at the top of the palace. When Zhang Xiaohua looked back, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Behind him was the palace door that he had just entered. He saw that the palace door was also 1,000 feet tall. Wasn't it also 1,000 feet wide on both sides? He didn't know what material it was made of, but the entire palace door emitted a faint golden light. Zhang Xiaohua looked up at the somewhat blurry archway at the top of the palace door and felt dizzy. Standing in front of this palace door, he was not much bigger than an ant. Casting a spell, Zhang Xiaohua wanted to soar into the air, but after flying 3 feet, he fell to the ground with a thud. He couldn't fly in the immortal mansion. Oh no, Zhang Xiaohua thought to himself and immediately released his divine sense. Sure enough, his divine sense could only extend 3 feet, and couldn't go any further. Sigh. Why, is there a restriction in the immortal abode? As Zhang Xiaohua thought about this, he took out the chasing dream sword and stepped into the jade passageway. Bang! A huge force was emitted from the passage, and Zhang Xiaohua's figure was sent flying into the air. Unfortunately, even when he reached the red jade stone passage, Zhang Xiaohua still couldn't put his foot on the passage. Although the force of this red jade stone passage was very weak, but there was a needle hidden in silk. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't stand steadily on that passage. Strange, don't tell me this jade stone passage is taken by different people? Is there a difference in cultivation level? Zhang Xiaohua suddenly thought, but in front seems to be 100 feet tall blood-red barrier. I can't pass through it either. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua channeled his true energy to his foot and stepped on the red passage. As expected, this time, the force of the passage was much weaker. Zhang Xiaohua stepped on the passage with 1 foot. As expected. With that thought, Zhang Xiaohua silently channeled the true energy in his meridians and put his other foot on the passage. That foot was steady, but Zhang Xiaohua felt that the force of the second foot was stronger. Just like that, Zhang Xiaohua staggered forward for about 10 steps. The force of the passage became stronger and stronger. In the end, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't take it anymore. He was pushed back to his original spot by a force that he couldn't resist. Zhang Xiaohua was a little dumbfounded. Logically speaking, his hands had the strength of tens of thousands of kilograms, so his feet should have the same amount of strength. But, on the 7-colored jade passageway, he was defeated, and the thing that was defeated was the strength that he was so proud of. If I can't pass through this passage, Nun Jing-yi and the rest may not be able to pass through. Zhang Xiaohua began to compare himself. Then, he looked at the blood-red light screen in the distance and rushed over again. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua had already walked from the center of the palace gate to the right. Was it not more than 2,000 feet? His position had deviated from the front of the palace. But when Zhang Xiaohua walked another 5,000 feet and came to the side of the blood-red light screen, he saw that the palace in the distance was still facing him. Luckily, there was a black and white jade stone passage near the blood-red light screen. This passage was only about 10 feet long and was much narrower than the previous one. The black and white jade squares were pieced together to form a passage. If it doesn't work, I really have to think of another way. Zhang Xiaohua thought and stepped on the passage. Out of Zhang Xiaohua's expectations, this black and white jade stone passage didn't have much force. After walking so far, I can finally enter the palace. Zhang Xiaohua was delighted and was about to execute the ethereal steps. But just as he increased his speed, he immediately felt the fluctuation of energy under his feet. It seemed that the strange force was about to appear again. Do I have to walk step by step? Zhang Xiaohua could only stop the ethereal steps and walked forward slowly. Indeed, as long as he walked slowly, the force would only increase slightly. I didn't do anything wrong, right? When Zhang Xiaohua had walked halfway, he already felt that from the black and white jade stone under his feet, there was an obvious force that was obstructing his footwork. There's really no other choice. I only wanted to go in and take a look to see if I could pick up one or two treasures. Why is it like this? Since you don't allow people to pass through the passage, why did you send this immortal mansion out from the void? Zhang Xiaohua grumbled inwardly. Suddenly, he thought of the terrifying aura that had spread out from the immortal abode. He broke out in a cold sweat. I came all the way here to look for treasures, not to throw my life away. This passageway is full of mysteries. If I go in, won't I be courting death? Zhang Xiaohua stopped and raised his head to look at the palace in the distance. It was really mysterious. When Zhang Xiaohua walked to the blood-red light screen, he felt that he was facing the front of the palace. Now that he had walked halfway through the passage, he realized that he had deviated from the center of the palace by a lot. Why don't I just take a look at the palace and return immediately? Zhang Xiaohua comforted himself. Since I've come so far, the aura has not appeared. Moreover, I was brought in by the Hao Tian mirror. I didn't really want to come in. Zhang Xiaohua was obsessed with money and found a lot of excuses for himself. In a while, the people from the aroma cult, the Dalan temple, and between the clouds and the water will all come. I'm afraid that the aura won't be able to handle it. Maybe it won't be dangerous if I sneak in. It was not Zhang Xiaohua's fault. At the foot of Ya Mountain, countless people risked their lives to come to the immortal mansion to try their luck. They had already forgotten about the horror of the blood-red light screen. Now that Zhang Xiaohua had entered the immortal mansion, how could he return empty-handed? After thinking for a moment, Zhang Xiaohua continued to move forward. The second half of the passage was not as easy as the first half. The closer he got to the palace, Zhang Xiaohua felt that the force under his feet was increasing. He could only move forward by using his Heart Sutra to continuously send vital energy to his feet. Otherwise, he might be bounced into the flowing water on the side. The flowing water was also strange. When he stepped into the passage, he only saw that the water was about 10 feet long. But after walking for a long time, the flowing water was still at the side of the passage. It looked like it was still about 10 feet long. Zhang Xiaohua could not see through the flowing water. However, he strongly believed that if he fell into the flowing water, he would not have a good ending. Therefore, he took out a small primordial stone and absorbed the vital energy of heaven and earth from it as he continued to move forward. Before long, he was only about 10 feet away from the palace. Zhang Xiaohua realized that he was already far away from the center of the palace. He was almost at the leftmost side of the palace. Moreover, there was no obvious door to the palace. There was only a huge purple light screen in the center, and then there were blue, cyan, green, yellow, orange, and red light screens. These light screens were of different sizes. As the colors changed, they became smaller and smaller. To the right of Zhang Xiaohua, next to the red light screen, there was a pale white light screen that was a head taller than Zhang Xiaohua. Maybe that white light screen is the black and white passage, the door to the palace. Zhang Xiaohua thought to himself. At this moment, on the black and white passage, there was another strange change. The force that was going up suddenly reversed and suddenly went down. A huge force pressed down on Zhang Xiaohua from above. Zhang Xiaohua was thinking about how to get in and out of the palace. This change was completely unexpected. He staggered and almost fell into the flowing water. Are you kidding me? Zhang Xiaohua shouted angrily. He quickly stabilized his body and used a little strength to stabilize himself. When Zhang Xiaohua stood properly, the force did not decrease. It was as if there was 1,000 pounds of mountain pressing down on him. Please vote for me. Please vote for me. Please add me. Chapter 1174. The pressure on Zhang Xiaohua's body was extremely heavy, probably more than 1,000 jin. When Zhang Xiaohua slowly walked to the end of the passage, the pressure had increased to more than 10,000 jin. Luckily, this weight was still considered light for Zhang Xiaohua. When he stepped out of the black and white passage, the pressure suddenly disappeared without a trace. In front of Zhang Xiaohua was the pale white light curtain. His left hand clenched tightly on Chasing Dream. Zhang Xiaohua did not move to the side. He knew that since he could not walk through the red passage, then he could forget about the red light curtain that was opposite the red passage. When Zhang Xiaohua easily passed through the white light curtain, an extremely strange feeling rose from the bottom of his heart. It was as if there was a divine sense that he could not detect scanning his entire body. A feeling of nowhere to escape also arose spontaneously. But before he could think carefully, he was shocked by what he saw in front of him. This was an incomparably huge space. At the top, there were the sun, moon, and stars. Thousands of stars were shining brightly, and these stars were moving and shining. It was no different from the usual starry sky. The orbit of the sun, moon, and stars faintly matched with Zhang Xiaohua's sky Dao starry sky. Looking at the bottom, there was a passage paved with 7 colored clouds. That passage was like the clouds. Below the passage was mountains, rivers, grasslands, deserts, etc. Zhang Xiaohua seemed to be standing on top of the 9 heavens, standing on top of a white cloud, looking down at the earth. After standing in a daze for a long time, Zhang Xiaohua finally regained his senses. It was not that he had not flown in mid-air before, but his flying technique was limited. The heaven and earth elemental qi was also limited. It was impossible for him to fly to an extremely high altitude. Although he had long enjoyed looking down from above, but that height could not be compared to this. Of course, when Zhang Xiaohua was comprehending the sky Dao and the union of heaven and man, he also had this feeling. But that was because his consciousness was constantly increasing. The deepest impression was of the sky Dao. He was afraid that he would not be able to remember such details. That's 5 Claws Peak and Yaoshan. In the middle of the faraway sky, there was a huge throne. It was shining with 7 colored brilliance. Just below the throne, there was a small hill. At this moment, under the hill, there were countless thin things that looked like ants. They were wriggling non-stop. Beside the hill, there was a peak that looked like 5 fingers. Zhang Xiaohua wiped his eyes and cried out in disbelief. Just as he was about to take a step forward to take a look, the white cloud under his feet moved and slowly flew forward. The closer he got to the 7-colored throne, the bigger it got. Yao Shan could finally see it clearly. However, when he reached a certain distance, the white cloud could no longer get any closer. No matter how much he tried to move forward, the white cloud would slip to the side and move in another direction. Near the left side of the throne, there were many clouds of various colors floating leisurely. So that's how it is. After looking for a while, Zhang Xiaohua could see some clues. Although there were many clouds of different colors, they all followed a certain pattern. The purple clouds were at the front, very close to the huge throne. Beyond that, there were blue, green, yellow, orange, and red clouds. On Zhang Xiaohua's side, there were only some faint white clouds. On the other side of the throne, there were some dark clouds. The clouds are also divided into levels. Just like the passageway outside the palace, the higher the level, the closer to the center. In this palace, the closest to the throne in the center. Zhang Xiaohua thought to himself. In the middle of the small hall, there were a few green praying mats placed randomly. In addition, in the 4 corners of the small hall, there was an identical incense burner. At this time, the incense burners were empty, and there was not even a speck of incense ash. Zhang Xiaohua walked closer and released his divine sense to scan through everything. Other than a few praying mats that were similar to the ones in his money pouch, the rest didn't have any fluctuations of heaven and earth yuan qi. Most likely, they were just ordinary items. After putting the praying mats into his belt, Zhang Xiaohua came out from another exit of the small hall. The exit of this small hall was facing a round arched light screen, just like a moon door. And in front of this moon door, there was only a black and white passageway. Maybe only people in the black and white passageway can walk through. Zhang Xiaohua thought, but he immediately came to a realization. Perhaps anyone who could walk in any other color would be able to walk through the black and white tunnel. The passageways were divided into red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. The further one went, the higher the level, and the lower the color passageway or the palace door formed by the light screen, the higher the level. And people who walked through the lower colored passageway could not walk through the higher colored passageway or palace door. After passing through the white moon door, there was a huge open space in front of him. The open space was divided into many small individual pieces. In the small pieces, there seemed to be soil of different colors, and there were extremely different restrictions. In the middle of the open space, there was even a round pond. Is this a vegetable garden? Zhang Xiaohua walked all the way, looking left and right. To be honest, the layout of this open space was extremely similar to the vegetable garden of a certain family in the Guizhuang house. It was no wonder that Zhang Xiaohua thought so. When he walked to the pond in the middle, his divine sense saw that the water in the pond was rich in qi of heaven and earth. It was not inferior to the mountain spring in the Guizhuang house. Zhang Xiaohua then understood. Could it be that this place is used to grow herbs? Poor Zhang Xiaohua. Ever since Huanxi Manor, he had been tending to medicinal plants. Even after he came to the aroma cult, he was still planting medicinal plants. But he had never seen how the Tao of Immortals planted medicinal plants. The soil was of different colors, and the primal energies of heaven and earth were different. Furthermore, they were protected by seals. Naturally, he didn't know the ins and outs of the matter. Unfortunately, Zhang Xiaohua could not find a single medicinal herb even after looking through the entire plot of land. Furthermore, each small piece of soil had an extremely powerful restrictive spell on it. Even if Zhang Xiaohua wanted to take the soil away, there was no way for him to do so. But Zhang Xiaohua sighed. Without delay, he looked at the light screen on the other side of the open space and went out of the light screen. Out of the light screen, there was a place like a corridor. This light screen was in an inconspicuous corner of the corridor. Next to the corridor, there was a passage that could only allow one person to pass through, and halfway down this corridor, there was another corridor that was connected to this one. Zhang Xiaohua walked along the narrow black and white passage. When he reached the intersection of the two corridors, the black and white passage came to an abrupt end. It turned out that the other corridor did not have any color. It was just a gray passage that cut off the corridor, and at the other end of the corridor, various colored passages reappeared. Where does it lead to? I don't know if I can walk through it. Zhang Xiaohua walked to the intersection of the two corridors. He did not dare to move forward. He looked left and right. The left seemed to lead to the back of the big palace. Zhang Xiaohua tried to step on the ground. The gray ground did not produce any force, and the ground was soft. Just as Zhang Xiaohua stepped on the ground, the meridians in Zhang Xiaohua's body trembled. The true qi in the meridians was also rapidly circulating. Zhang Xiaohua had a feeling that her meridians had a life of their own. This life of meridians seemed to have felt that there was something on the left that attracted it. Is there a mistake? Zhang Xiaohua was frightened. What was behind this palace? It could actually attract the true qi in the meridians? Zhang Xiaohua naturally did not believe that the meridians had a life of their own. She only thought that the true qi was attracted by the thing behind the palace. Should I follow the black and white passage? Or should I take the risk and walk on this gray path? Zhang Xiaohua could not help but ponder. Needless to say, just by looking at the small hall that Zhang Xiaohua could enter just now, Zhang Xiaohua knew that the black and white passage was the lowest color in this immortal mansion. The places that one could go to were the lowest level places. The possibility of there being good things in these places was really too small. Let's go. Even if I don't go now, when Master Longevity and the others come, they will also go. I'd better walk in front of them. Zhang Xiaohua quickly made up her mind. The gray passage could not be penetrated by divine sense. It looked strange, but walking on it was different from the smooth black and white passage. It was rough, and it was no different from walking on a normal mountain path. Chapter 1175. Zhang Xiaohua didn't know how long he had walked. It seemed that in this gray passage, he couldn't feel the passage of time. Perhaps it was a cup of tea, perhaps it was a meal, perhaps it was several hours. The scenery around him kept changing. With every step he took, he felt that he had arrived at a new place. After walking for a long time, Zhang Xiaohua was too lazy to look around, until an ordinary stone staircase appeared in front of him. At the top of the staircase was a diamond-shaped hut similar to a Buddhist shrine. Moreover, that hut actually had an open door. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but be stunned. This immortal abode was full of strange things that Zhang Xiaohua couldn't figure out. Suddenly, an ordinary thing appeared, an ordinary hut. How could he not be shocked? Holding Chasing Dream in his left hand, Zhang Xiaohua tried to put his foot on the staircase. The staircase didn't have any reaction, and the hut didn't move either. Zhang Xiaohua then put his foot on the second step, until he reached the door of the hut. There was no reaction. Looking at the empty door, it was pitch black inside and he couldn't see anything. When Zhang Xiaohua released his divine sense, sure enough, that ordinary-looking door also had a restriction that blocked Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense. However, his divine sense didn't find anything special about this restriction. It was similar to other restrictions that he had seen in other places. Zhang Xiaohua first pierced Chasing Dream into the door. Seeing that there was no abnormality, he flashed in. Sure enough, that restriction didn't change. It didn't have any intention of stopping Zhang Xiaohua. However, when Zhang Xiaohua entered the hut, before he could see clearly what was inside, a huge force pressed down on him from all directions. It was more than 100 times stronger than what he had encountered in the black and white passage. Damn, I knew it. Zhang Xiaohua had just thought of this when his body unconsciously became sluggish. He felt as if there were countless mountains pressing down on him. His entire body couldn't move. Luckily, this was Zhang Xiaohua. If it was anyone else, wouldn't they have been crushed into meat paste? Crack! Crack! That was the sound of Zhang Xiaohua's bones being pressed down by a huge force. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua's meridians seemed to be shackled and she couldn't move a single bit. Raising her head with great difficulty, Zhang Xiaohua's eyes also moved with great difficulty. Only then could she clearly see everything in this small house. This small house was completely empty. There was nothing inside except for a door in front of him that could be vaguely seen. Strange patterns appeared on the diamond-shaped walls and the pointy roof. Zhang Xiaohua had never seen these patterns before, but they were similar to the patterns around the Hao Tian mirror. However, those patterns didn't flash with any brilliance. It didn't seem to be directly related to this huge force. Hence, Zhang Xiaohua frowned slightly. She wanted to release her divine sense to see what was wrong with these patterns. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua realized that her divine sense was also tightly pressed down in her Naiwan palace. She couldn't release it at all. Weird. Zhang Xiaohua only had this word in his mind. He really didn't know how there could be such a huge force in an empty room. Could it be that the floor of this hut was the same as the jade passage outside? Thinking about it, Zhang Xiaohua lowered her head. The floor was also gray and was similar to the passage outside the hut. She couldn't see anything strange. Zhang Xiaohua tried to lift his leg and take a step forward. However, just as he lifted his leg, an even heavier force pressed down on him, trying to stop him from lifting his leg. Zhang Xiaohua gritted his teeth and lifted his leg up forcefully. On the crystal-clear bones in his leg, there was a faint glow that was almost invisible to the naked eye. There were a few more thin red lines. Zhang Xiaohua finally lifted his leg and took a step forward. Then, with a loud pang, he landed heavily on the ground. What is this? Just as Zhang Xiaohua's foot landed on the ground, a purple thing suddenly appeared from the gray ground. Then, like a nimble fish, it twisted its body and disappeared. It's probably something good, right? Zhang Xiaohua thought to himself. Then, he lifted his leg again and took a step towards the place where the purple object disappeared. This step was as difficult as before, but Zhang Xiaohua felt that it was a little easier than before. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaohua had an idea. He put Chasing Dream into his embrace with much difficulty. Then, he took a stance and started to use the Big Dipper magical fist. Today, Zhang Xiaohua was in a hurry. When he woke up early in the morning, he didn't use it consecutively. Now that he saw such a heavy force pressing down on him, Zhang Xiaohua didn't know that he suddenly had the idea of using the Big Dipper magical fist. Sure enough, under the pressure of 1,000 caddies, using the Big Dipper magical fist was not an ordinary kind of effort. If not for the fact that Zhang Xiaohua was extremely familiar with the 108 moves, this fist technique might have been full of mistakes. Although it was extremely difficult to execute the Big Dipper God Fist, the effect was obvious. The cool stream that came from his left foot had never been so slow in his life, nor had it been so thick. After finishing a set of Big Dipper God Fist, Zhang Xiaohua was so tired that his forehead was covered in sweat, but the bones in his body were tight and comfortable. He opened his mouth and almost moaned. Then, Zhang Xiaohua started a second set. When the second set started, Zhang Xiaohua felt that his fists and feet seemed to be lighter. The cold flow also became faster. Could it be that it's really useful? Zhang Xiaohua thought and focused on honing his bones. What Zhang Xiaohua didn't know was that as the cold flow flowed, the redness on his bones increased. After finishing the Big Dipper magical fist, Zhang Xiaohua did it again as usual. In the end, a surprise finally came. The Big Dipper magical fist that Zhang Xiaohua had been practicing for a long time leveled up again. A new round of bone-honing cold flow rose from the soles of his feet. Ha ha ha! Zhang Xiaohua laughed from the bottom of his heart. He thought to himself, let's not talk about other things. My Big Dipper magical fist hasn't improved for a long time. To be able to level up in this inexplicable place, it's already not a waste of time. Zhang Xiaohua did it 4 more times, and the cold flow also appeared 4 more times. Until the 5th set, the cold flow didn't appear. However, by the 5th set, Zhang Xiaohua's Big Dipper magical fist was already strong and vigorous. It wasn't any different from when he used it outside. The strength that was as heavy as 1,000 caddies earlier was also much smaller now. Although Zhang Xiaohua's movements were still a little sluggish, it couldn't be compared to when he couldn't move an inch earlier. It's coming out again. Zhang Xiaohua had just stopped his fists and feet when the purple thing flashed past his ear. Could it be the dense purple gas? Zhang Xiaohua saw it more clearly this time. It was a wisp of purple gas, similar to the purple gas he saw when Byron was born. This is good stuff. Why would it appear here? Zhang Xiaohua thought of the situation where he used Chasing Dream to absorb the dense purple gas and then used Chasing Dream to break the array. The nameless part of his left arm didn't flow out for a long time now. He was helpless against many arrays. If he could absorb this dense purple gas, wouldn't Zhang Xiaohua have more confidence in this immortal abode's arrays? As he thought about it, Zhang Xiaohua reached out and took out Chasing Dream. His eyes searched left and right. That wisp of purple chi was extremely agile, appearing in different parts of the house from time to time. There was no pattern to it at all. Zhang Xiaohua held Chasing Dream for a moment before stopping. He stood quietly in the middle of the house, his eyes darting around as if he was waiting for a rabbit to appear in a tree stump. Sure enough, not long after, that purple gas passed by Zhang Xiaohua's eyes. Zhang Xiaohua used Chasing Dream and used the nameless swordsmanship to stab at the purple gas. Although this dense purple gas was very agile, it was originally a dead thing. How could it know how to dodge? Zhang Xiaohua's sword pierced through. That purple gas was sucked into the small sword like water by Chasing Dream. Then, it flowed along Zhang Xiaohua's left arm and disappeared into the nameless place. Hee hee. Zhang Xiaohua laughed and kept Chasing Dream. Looking left and right, he didn't find any other purple gas. Only then did he walk towards the door on the other side. The door on the other side was also open. It was similar to the door Zhang Xiaohua had entered through. There was only a layer of restriction that isolated divine sense. When Zhang Xiaohua walked out of that door, he was welcomed by a wave of blood. A gray passage led to a round palace. That palace was the first one that had appeared when the immortal abode had first appeared. Only at this time, that nest-like palace was glowing even more brightly. As for Zhang Xiaohua's true energy, it had been quiet the entire time, but as soon as it emerged from the hut, it began to seethe with excitement. It was almost as if it were challenging Zhang Xiaohua to continue onward through the gray passageway, all the way to the circular palace. That's strange. What could be in that palace? Could it be the immortal who emitted such a strong aura from before? Zhang Xiaohua was very hesitant. After walking for so long, she hadn't met any immortals. One of them was a wild beast that looked like a cow in the Guizhuang house, but only had one horn and one leg. Another was round like a hedgehog, except that there were only 3 spikes, and each spike was extremely long, and even shone with a cold light. There was another one that flew in the air, thin and long like a thick tree branch, without wings, only a long tail. These wild beasts, not only did they look strange, their physiques were also incomparably huge. Although they were far away, but Zhang Xiaohua knew that each of these wild beasts was 10 times his size. What is this place? Zhang Xiaohua laughed bitterly as he lifted his feet and took a step forward. It seems like... Walking into the wasteland, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly realized that his feet were not really stepping on the ground, and it seemed that he could use his divine sense. But the divine sense that he was so proud of in the pugilistic world, at this moment, in this incomparably huge wasteland, it seemed really insignificant. Wah! A strange cry, deafening to the ear, almost shook Zhang Xiaohua to the ground. Then, a gust of wind blew past, and Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. Just as he was about to dodge, he saw that in the distance, the bull-like thing seemed to have seen something afraid. One of its feet stamped on the ground, and its cumbersome body jumped forward. This jump was actually very far. But at the same time that the bull-like jumped, a wild beast that was much smaller than the bull-like flew from the horizon. This wild beast also had a slender body, with a snake-like head, and 4 small wings on both sides of its body. With a flick of its thin tail, it drew a wonderful arc in the air and flew to the sky above the bull-like. That bull-like seemed to have sensed the arrival of the snake. Seeing that it could not escape, it turned around and jumped again. Its body was in the air, and its head was raised to the sky. With a loud, sizzling sound, a bolt of lightning that was as thick as the mouth of a bull was formed from the horn, and it zigzagged towards the flying snake in the sky. Zhang Xiaohua watched from afar, and was already shocked. He had attracted the heavenly lightning before, but the lightning above the 9th heaven did not seem to be so thick. However, the flying snake didn't seem to care at all. It shook its tail lightly and dodged the attack with its slender body. The lightning swept past the flying snake's body. A faint black light flashed across the flying snake's body. It didn't seem to be injured at all. That bull-like seemed to have panicked. It jumped again, and its horn shot out another bolt of lightning, but this time the lightning was much weaker. That flying snake did not even care about it, and did not even bother to move its body. When the lightning struck the flying snake, only a sizzling sound was heard, and a faint black light appeared, but it was immediately extinguished. Looking at the flying snake again, the flying snake raised its head, as if it was about to shoot something. Zhang Xiaohua could not help but open his eyes wide, to see what kind of supernatural power this flying snake had. Unexpectedly, the flying snake raised its head. Its slender mouth did not emit any light. Instead, its entire body shot towards the cow like a bolt of lightning. The cow was extremely frightened. Its body kept twisting and turning. Its single leg was also jumping left and right on the spot. It was trying its best to escape the attack of the flying snake. But it was obvious that the speed of this bull-like was much slower than that of the flying snake. The flying snake's tail turned nimbly, and its slender head directly pierced into the bull-like chest. At the same time, the bull-like body of the bull-like lightning flashed, and many arcs of light flashed out, but this was not enough to stop the flying snake. Chapter 1177. Zhang Xiaohua cast a spell and flew in the direction of the bird's cry. Along the way, although Zhang Xiaohua felt that he was flying very high, but, compared to the huge rocks in the wasteland, he was simply too small. This made Zhang Xiaohua unconsciously think of the Sumeru world where Wan Wuxin was. That was also a rock. When he walked closer, that rock had already turned into a huge mountain. Could it be that this place also has the same magic? Just as Zhang Xiaohua was thinking, suddenly, an incomparably old aura descended from the sky. An incomparably huge black shadow also blocked Zhang Xiaohua's head. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. His heart thumped wildly. He immediately stopped and looked up. My goodness, isn't this the flying snake that I saw in the distance just now? Zhang Xiaohua was so scared that he hurriedly descended from the sky and stood there obediently. He took out Chasing Dream in his hand and carefully guarded. Just now, he was far away and only knew that this flying snake was huge, but he didn't have a direct impression. Now that he was under the flying snake, he really knew how big this flying snake was. That flying snake, its slender head was as big as the peak of Ya Mountain. On top of its head, there seemed to be a crown that was about the size of Five Claw Peak. It was black and white. Those black eyes without eyelids were as big as Dianqi Lake. Its entire body. Zhang Xiaohua was already unable to estimate. It seemed that only the remnant body of the dragon vein that he saw at the bottom of Jiuhua Peak could be compared to it. The flying snake was already so huge. How big was the cow that the flying snake drilled into just now? Zhang Xiaohua didn't need to think to know. Zhang Xiaohua was very nervous. He felt that his heart was about to jump out of his body, but he could only stand there quietly. He was afraid that he would attract the attention of the flying snake and bring an unexpected disaster to himself. It was unknown if the flying snake had noticed Zhang Xiaohua, but its huge body was hovering above Zhang Xiaohua's head. The stench coming out of the flying snake's mouth and nose made it hard for Zhang Xiaohua to breathe. She held her breath and didn't dare to look at the flying snake's eyes. She only stared at the sky and observed with her peripheral vision. Zhang Xiaohua's other hand had already formed a spell. She was just waiting for an unforeseen event, and she would immediately fly back regardless of everything. However, the flying snake continued to hover above Zhang Xiaohua's head. Its mountain-like aura made it hard for Zhang Xiaohua to breathe, but the flying snake refused to leave. In the end, Zhang Xiaohua tried to look directly into the flying snake's eyes, but the flying snake turned a deaf ear to her. Could it be that this flying snake can't see me? Zhang Xiaohua was a little surprised. But after thinking about it, it was normal. Who would pay attention to a small ant for no reason? Hence, Zhang Xiaohua tried to take 2 steps forward. Once there was a sound, the flying snake would be alarmed and the stench from its mouth and nose would come towards Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. While scolding himself for being rash, he immediately sat cross-legged and faced the sky. Sure enough, once he calmed down, the flying snake lost its target again. It looked left and right. Many times, its gaze swept past Zhang Xiaohua's body, but it just ignored her. Fine, Zhang Xiaohua saw this and decided not to move. He just sat there and waited for the flying snake to leave. Since he was bored, Zhang Xiaohua naturally wanted to circulate the Carefree Heart Sutra in his body. But just as he released his spiritual awareness and wanted to draw qi into his body, he was immediately sensed by the flying snake. This scared Zhang Xiaohua so much that he didn't dare to make any more movements. Zhang Xiaohua jumped up and wanted to fly into the depression. But after flying for another 10 feet or so, he was blocked by an invisible barrier. And this barrier was even more strange. Not only was it invisible to the divine sense, even the naked eye couldn't see it. Zhang Xiaohua landed on the ground and his divine sense easily passed through the barrier. It was as if it didn't exist. He stretched his hand forward and there didn't seem to be anything blocking him. But, when his hand reached a certain point, it couldn't go any further. Then, Zhang Xiaohua held Chasing Dream in his left hand and stabbed forward. That barrier blocked Chasing Dream and he couldn't pierce it at all. When Zhang Xiaohua switched hands with Chasing Dream and tried to use his hand again, that barrier couldn't stop Zhang Xiaohua's hand. His hand still couldn't go any further after reaching a certain point. Strange, what's going on? Zhang Xiaohua scratched his head and lifted his leg to kick over. That leg also went past the barrier but was blocked again after reaching a certain point. But when Zhang Xiaohua tried to move his body forward, his thin and long body couldn't go any further. He lowered his head and looked at himself. Zhang Xiaohua pinched his chin and thought for a long time. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he laughed. Could it be that it's like this? Zhang Xiaohua felt enlightened. He took off the robe that he got from Venerable Fiery Dragon and stretched his hand out again. Ha ha ha, it's really like this. Zhang Xiaohua's entire arm actually went through the barrier without any obstruction. But his waist was blocked again. It should be the problem with the belt. Zhang Xiaohua took the belt and then took out the money bag. In the end, he successfully went through the barrier without any problems. Then, Zhang Xiaohua squatted down and stretched out his hand. He went past the barrier and picked up the money bag. Indeed, the hand that was holding the money bag couldn't be retracted no matter what. It seems that this barrier is able to block all Dharma artifacts. Anything that has the qi of heaven and earth will not be able to enter. Zhang Xiaohua finally understood, but, this bracelet of mine, how can it enter? Zhang Xiaohua touched the bracelet on his left arm and thought to himself. There weren't any traces of humans in the wilderness. But, Zhang Xiaohua still didn't feel at ease leaving his things outside. After passing through the barrier, Zhang Xiaohua wanted to use his little sword to dig a hole to bury the things. But, he didn't know what was wrong with the ground. Zhang Xiaohua had no choice but to find a crack in a huge rock and stuff the things in. He then used a jade talisman to set up a restriction. Only then did he feel at ease and walked into the barrier. Not far from the barrier, there was a depression. It was like a huge basin that was prepared to contain something. Zhang Xiaohua flew into the basin and released his spiritual perception. He searched around to see if he could find anything. At this moment, a loud bird's cry sounded from above Zhang Xiaohua's head. That bird's cry was filled with grief and despair. Zhang Xiaohua was greatly alarmed. He raised his head and saw that an incomparably huge phoenix had appeared in the air above his head. That phoenix was more than 100 times bigger than the flying snake that Zhang Xiaohua saw just now. Oh no, why am I here? Zhang Xiaohua panicked. He made a hand gesture and was about to fly away. But at this moment, the phoenix cried out 3 times. Its entire body that was covered in rainbow feathers suddenly emitted 1,000 feet long rainbow light. Then, the light was annihilated. From within the phoenix's body, there was a dark red blood color. This blood color was so bright, it was like a burning flame. It was fire. Small flames ignited from every inch of the phoenix's body, drowning the phoenix's entire body in dark red flames. A tragic cry sounded again, resounding through the heavens and earth. This phoenix was actually undergoing nirvana. At the same time, in the huge basin, there was also a dark red flame that shot up into the sky. From below, it rushed towards the wailing phoenix. Zhang Xiaohua was above the basin. He had just used the power of flight and had not flown more than 10 feet. A heart-wrenching pain came from his feet. Before Zhang Xiaohua could cry out, he immediately fainted and fell asleep. Indeed, it was midnight. Zhang Xiaohua had fallen asleep. Just as Zhang Xiaohua was screaming, a strange wave came from his body. Then, countless starlight shone through the immortal abode, through the obstacles, and onto his body. However, this wave and the starlight could not stop the flames that shot up into the sky. In an instant, all of Zhang Xiaohua's clothes, as well as the hair and flesh on his body, turned into nothingness. Please vote monthly, please vote recommendation, please bookmark, please tip. Chapter 1178. What kind of flame was the flame used for the phoenix's nirvana? Wasn't it one of the best flames in the world? Wisps of flame appeared out of nowhere from every inch of the phoenix's flesh, incinerating every inch of the phoenix's flesh. At the same time, the flame appeared from all directions in the void, burning towards the phoenix that was about to undergo nirvana. Zhang Xiaohua was just an ordinary person. How could she resist this innate flame? Zhang Xiaohua's body was instantly incinerated into nothingness the moment it came into contact with the flame. However, Zhang Xiaohua was not an ordinary person. Although this flame was rare in the world, there were some things in Zhang Xiaohua's body that this flame could not incinerate. Zhang Xiaohua floated silently in midair. Her complete skeleton from head to toe glowed in the crimson flame. Her skeleton was not an ordinary grayish-white color. Instead, it was sparkling and translucent like jade. On the jade-like skeleton, close to 50% of it was covered with thin, blood-red threads. As the crimson flame burned, not only did the skeleton not melt, the thin, blood-red threads on it extended even further. Only when they covered 60% of it did they gradually slow down. Looking at the surroundings of the skeleton, there was no longer any blood on the blood vessels that were flowing with blood. Only faint golden threads continued to circulate along the previous path, gathering at the location of the heart. At the location of the heart, there was a large ball of golden threads slowly rotating. The place where the internal organs used to be was no longer the same as before. There were only strands of golden threads that followed the circulation of the blood vessels, forming a ball of golden threads. One could still vaguely see the original outline. When he looked at Zhang Xiaohua's meridians, his original meridians had been completely incinerated. Only the dragon meridians that had been sucked into his meridians and stuck to the inner walls of his meridians were still intact. They were even growing stronger in the flames. Zhang Xiaohua's vital energy was still circulating slowly because it was in the dragon vein. The starlight that had formed a cocoon used to wrap around Zhang Xiaohua's body. Now, it was wrapping around Zhang Xiaohua's meridians. Following the circulation of the vital energy, it slowly seeped into Zhang Xiaohua's meridians. What was even more convenient was that under the burning flames, the starlight was also refined into pure qi of heaven and earth, which was directly absorbed by Zhang Xiaohua's meridians. Looking at Zhang Xiaohua's head, the Naiwen Palace was also a sea of fire. In the sea of fire, the golden essence of elixir was even more dazzling. With the slight rotation of the innate divine seal, the blood jade elixir refining technique was triggered again. The flames in the sea of fire were directly refined into an essence of elixir by the innate divine seal. In the center of the innate divine seal, the essence of elixir that had not changed for a long time began to expand slowly. Although it was very slow, it was still an improvement. Somewhere behind her head, there was a small, invisible place that looked a little strange in the flames. When the flames burned this place, it was immediately absorbed by this place. Hence, a black spot in the sea of fire was formed. Most of the flames in the surroundings were absorbed by this small black spot. However, in this sea of fire, Zhang Xiaohua was already like an ant. That small black spot was even more insignificant. The delusion breaker Dharma eye on Zhang Xiaohua's left hand was also opened. The silver eye was still emotionless. Whenever the blood-red flames burned through the delusion breaker Dharma eye, it was absorbed by the Dharma eye. There were already two things in the delusion breaker Dharma eye. One was the thunder pearl, and the other was a human-shaped stone statue. Countless lightning bolts surrounded the stone statue, constantly refining it. At this moment, the flames were also sucked in, surrounding the entire stone statue and burning it continuously. The fire used by the phoenix's nirvana had the ability to shape. At this moment, the human-shaped stone statue's facial features and limbs gradually began to appear. The only thing that didn't change was the bracelet on Zhang Xiaohua's left arm. It was still black and still warm. It didn't heat up at all because it was in the sea of fire. Above Zhang Xiaohua's arm, at an unknown distance, the gigantic phoenix was surrounded by blood-red flames. Its entire body was gradually turning into nothingness. Only 13,200 bright spots were left to form the outline of the phoenix. Immediately after, these 13,200 bright spots were annihilated at the same time, turning into 13,200 nothingness. Then, a powerful suction force was generated, sucking in all the yuan qi of heaven and earth in the surroundings. These 13,200 bright spots appeared out of thin air again. However, they weren't as bright as before. They were abnormally dim. Once these 13,200 bright spots appeared, they immediately became 13,200 origin points that absorbed the yuan qi of heaven and earth from all directions. However, when these 13,200 bright spots appeared, they had already sucked in all the yuan qi in the surroundings. Where would the yuan qi come from now? Instantly, these 13,200 bright spots dimmed a little. With a "ga" sound, an indistinct and weak cry sounded. The suction force of the bright spots suddenly increased several times. Countless cracks appeared from these 13,200 bright spots, splitting the entire space apart. The surrounding scenery was like a reflection in a bronze mirror. Along with the bronze mirror, the cracks expanded infinitely, extending from the sky to the ground, and from the ground to an extremely far place. The scene was chaotic. The entire wasteland, the space where the wasteland was located, was shattered into pieces, turning into pure yuan qi, which was absorbed by the 132 million bright spots. These bright spots had absorbed so much yuan qi of heaven and earth, and gradually grew in size, turning into 132 million pieces of phoenix flesh. The original space of the wasteland had turned into nothingness, leaving only the bowl-shaped basin under Zhang Xiaohua's skeleton. At the edge of the basin, there was a cylindrical light shield that shot upwards. The phoenix that was born from nirvana was within this light shield. Looking up, above the phoenix, at the end of the light shield, there were 8 different shaped Dharma artifacts that formed a profound array that enveloped the phoenix. These 8 Dharma artifacts were bell, sword, axe, pagoda, guqin, cauldron, seal, and a stone. These 8 Dharma artifacts formed a light array that emitted a faint white light that protected the entire space. This white light was the light that sprinkled down from the 9 heavens when Zhang Xiaohua's meridians moved. At this time, the entire space returned to its original state. It was a piece of nothingness, and only the 8 Dharma artifacts and the basin below remained. However, within this space, there was very little yuan qi of heaven and earth. Only the 13,200 points of phoenix flesh that flickered with blood-red flames had stopped growing. After a moment, the phoenix's silhouette let out a mournful cry. This cry was filled with panic and grief, as if it was a kind of doomsday, a kind of reincarnation. The 13,200 points of phoenix flesh increased the suction force once again. The entire space no longer had a trace of yuan qi of heaven and earth. It was just outside the space. Inside the immortal mansion, outside the immortal mansion, and at the peak of Yao Mountain, not a trace of yuan qi was sucked in. In the middle of the 132 million pieces of flesh, an almost illusory soul essence with the outline of a phoenix gradually appeared. The soul essence had a sharp beak and long phoenix eyes. Those phoenix eyes were incomparably arrogant, but now, they were filled with despair. The phoenix's eyes turned slightly, and an unparalleled aura swept across the entire space. Although it was incomparably weak, it was abnormally arrogant. Then, the phoenix's eyes noticed the cocoon of light that was enveloped by starlight around Zhang Xiaohua's skeleton. In this space, only the faint amount of yuan qi of heaven and earth in this cocoon of light was being refined and absorbed by the dragon vein. The phoenix's soul essence let out a long cry. It was extremely unwilling and disdainful. With a flap of its invisible wings, the phoenix's soul essence descended from the heavens. In an instant, it was above Zhang Xiaohua's skeleton. The 13,200 points of phoenix flesh also fell and landed on Zhang Xiaohua's skeleton. The phoenix's flesh and blood landed on the skeleton and coincidentally covered the entire skeleton. There was no longer a trace of emptiness. The cocoon-like starlight gradually merged into the dragon vein and was absorbed by the phoenix's flesh and blood that landed on the skeleton. The phoenix's flesh and blood expanded little by little. After an unknown period of time, the flesh and blood became extremely plump and gradually, a body was formed. However, because the flesh was attached to Zhang Xiaohua's skeleton, it formed a human body. Not only the flesh on the skeleton, even the internal organs and blood in the blood vessels were all Zhang Xiaohua's original appearance. Ga. 9 consecutive cries sounded. The flesh on Zhang Xiaohua's skeleton wriggled, as if it was about to change into another shape. The phoenix's soul essence was also a little anxious inside Zhang Xiaohua's skeleton. However, the flesh wriggled a few times, but in the end, it did not succeed. The skeleton that was attached to it did not move at all. The blood that was attached to the golden threads boiled a few times, but the golden threads remained the same as before. When the phoenix's soul essence saw this, it knew that its wishful thinking had gone wrong. It spread its wings again, wanting to take flight again. Unfortunately, no matter how the soul essence struggled, the 13,200 phoenix flesh that had already fused with the skeleton and golden threads could no longer move with the phoenix's soul essence. Furthermore, as the starlight increased, the flesh became even more plump and could no longer be separated from the golden threads and skeleton. The phoenix's soul essence wailed for the last time, as if it had fallen into a desperate situation. At this moment, at the black spot behind Zhang Xiaohua's head, a desolate dragon's roar sounded, echoing the phoenix's wail. The phoenix's soul essence was surprised and hesitant, but, when it looked around, it was empty space without any heaven and earth yuan qi. The phoenix's flesh was also gradually growing from the fire. It was actually that person's body. With no other choice, it spread its wings and flew towards the black spot behind her head. When it got close, the black spot suddenly produced a strange attractive force, and the phoenix's soul essence was instantly sucked into it. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote recommendation and monthly. Chapter 1179. When the phoenix's soul was absorbed by the black spot behind Zhang Xiaohua's head, the 13,200 pieces of flesh of the phoenix were controlled by Zhang Xiaohua's bones and golden threads. They gradually swelled and became plump. Another Zhang Xiaohua was slowly born. There was no sense of time in the chaos. Similarly, there was no sense of time in the void. After an unknown period of time, the cocoon-like starlight slowly faded away. A brand new Zhang Xiaohua was reborn once again. Looking at the skin all over her body, a faint fiery red was faintly discernible. When Zhang Xiaohua suddenly opened her eyes, two unusually bright flames flashed in Zhang Xiaohua's eyes. This. Zhang Xiaohua woke up and seemed to recall what happened last night. She stretched out her hands and looked at her intact hands. Then, she lowered her head and looked. Ouch, she exclaimed. Needless to say, her body was exposed. There was nothing on her body. Carefully covering her vital parts, Zhang Xiaohua turned her head and looked around. Where is this? Last night. Didn't I reach a depression in the wilderness? Why? This seems to be the void that Senior Huan mentioned. There's nothing here. I can't see anything. Zhang Xiaohua was surprised and looked up, down, left, and right again. Under my feet. It seems to be the same as before. It's like a basin. Could it be? I'm still in the depression. Zhang Xiaohua recalled the feeling before she fainted last night. She thought to herself, but what about the wilderness? Suddenly, Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. Her back almost broke out in cold sweat. Could it be, the entire wilderness is an illusory formation? Yesterday, I encountered flying snakes, cows, and hedgehogs. Were they all things in the illusory formation? Looking up, the 8 magic weapons of different shapes had fallen a lot. She could see their shapes clearly. These 8 magic weapons. What are they for? Zhang Xiaohua said curiously, ouch, the phoenix. Yes, these 8 magic weapons are used to suppress the phoenix. But where did the phoenix go? Zhang Xiaohua scratched her head. Of course, even if Zhang Xiaohua wanted to scratch her head, she couldn't free her hands. Forget it, forget it. Don't worry about anything else. Let's put on the robe first. As Zhang Xiaohua thought about it, she felt fortunate that she had placed Venerable Fiery Dragon's robe outside the light shield. Oh my baby. Zhang Xiaohua was just rejoicing that she had placed all her treasures in the light shield and had not been destroyed by the blood-red flames. Immediately, she thought of the void outside the light shield. The wilderness that used to be an illusion array had long disappeared. Would her treasures still be there? Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua immediately soared up and was about to fly over the light barrier. However, the moment he touched the light barrier immediately flashed with white light and blocked him inside. What? Don't let me go out. Wasn't it easy to get in just now? Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. He tried to get out again, but he was still trapped inside. I can't get out. What should I do? Zhang Xiaohua was at a loss. She didn't know if the dream-chasing sword was still outside the light shield. Even though her left arm was flowing with energy, she didn't know if she could break the light shield. Zhang Xiaohua regretted her decision and punched the light shield. With a loud bang, the light shield shook slightly. Another ray of milky white light shone down from the array formed by the 8 magic weapons in the sky. That milky white light enveloped Zhang Xiaohua tightly. It paused for a moment, then swept 8 times in a row. It seemed uncertain. After the last sweep, the milky white light suddenly dispersed into specks of fluorescent light. Then, above her head, there was a thunderous sound, shaking Zhang Xiaohua, who was standing on the basin, left and right. Then, there was another earthquake. The basin under Zhang Xiaohua's feet began to shake violently. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked and quickly jumped up. When she looked down, the basin slowly shrank into the shape of a teapot lid, floating under Zhang Xiaohua's feet. The demon refining pot. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. Wasn't this teapot the same as the lid of the demon refining pot in Bai Yanqiu's hands? The lid of the demon refining pot rotated under Zhang Xiaohua's feet and immediately flew up again. Zhang Xiaohua raised his head and saw that the 8 different types of immortal treasures that he had seen earlier were all floating in the air. They were no longer in the same tight formation as before. When the lid of the demon refining gourd flew forward, the 9 immortal treasures began to spin. Then, in a flash, they flew in all directions and disappeared without a trace. Looking at the light shield around Zhang Xiaohua, there was no trace of it. The array, was broken just like that. I didn't seem to have done anything. Zhang Xiaohua scratched her chin, looking quite innocent. Suddenly, she thought, oh, I should have caught a few magic weapons. If they are of the same level as Bai Yanqiu's demon refining pot, how can they be bad? Maybe the demon refining pot in Bai Yanqiu's hands is a fake, and the one in here is the real one. However, at this time, the 9 magic weapons were all gone. Even if Zhang Xiaohua wanted to find them, it would be very difficult. A belt? Ha ha ha. Zhang Xiaohua had yet to release his divine sense when he saw a belt and a money pouch floating in the air not far from him. With a wave of her hand, the money bag and the belt appeared in her hand. The first thing Zhang Xiaohua did was to take out a long robe from the belt and put it on. This feeling of nakedness was really awkward. Just when she put away the money bag and the belt, there was another rumbling sound under Zhang Xiaohua's feet. Before Zhang Xiaohua looked down, she saw that in the place where the demon refining pot was, from the void, there was a crystal-clear stone tablet. Around the stone tablet were 7 circular grooves. What is this? Zhang Xiaohua was puzzled. She made a hand seal and flew to the stone tablet. Just as she was about to get close, she was suddenly blocked by an invisible barrier. Why is it this kind of restriction that is invisible to the naked eye and divine sense again? Zhang Xiaohua was flustered and exasperated. She looked up and down with her divine sense and naked eye, but did not see the same array as the 9 magic weapons just now. Strange. Zhang Xiaohua was puzzled and raised her hand to scratch her head. Oh, where is Ai's hair? At this time, Zhang Xiaohua realized that there was not a single strand of hair on her head. She was like a monk in the Dalan temple. Naturally, Zhang Xiaohua touched her head and took out the Hao Tian mirror from the money bag. She looked at her head and was surprised. Not only was there no hair on her head, but her flat nose was also much taller and her small eyes were much longer than before. Of course, she did not have any eyebrows or eyelashes. Oh my! What happened? I don't think I used any transfiguration technique. How did I become so charming? Zhang Xiaohua patted her forehead and did not know what to do. At this time, the Hao Tian mirror in her hands suddenly trembled. Zhang Xiaohua felt that something was wrong. Just as she was about to grab the Hao Tian mirror with her left hand and put it into the money bag, the Hao Tian mirror disappeared with a flash of silver light. When it appeared again, it was 10 feet high in the sky and disappeared with a flash of silver light. Zhang Xiaohua immediately used the first level of the Hao Tian mirror to refine the Hao Tian mirror. However, she could feel that the Hao Tian mirror was in the void, but she could not retract it. Annoyed, Zhang Xiaohua flew to the top of the stone tablet and kicked the invisible barrier. Unfortunately, the barrier didn't budge. Instead, Zhang Xiaohua's foot was shaken to the point of pain. This is the Big Dipper. Zhang Xiaohua was beside the stone tablet and above the 7 grooves. She could see the positions of the 7 grooves clearly. They were exactly the same as the Big Dipper in the alchemy room of the Misty School. Could it be? Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly became excited, as if his heart was about to jump out of his chest. These 7 cauldrons, yes, there were 49 cauldrons in total, from the Fragrant Cult, the Godly Knife Sect, and the Misty Sect. Zhang Xiaohua was just greedy, so he collected them one by one. As for what they were used for, he didn't even know. At this moment, seeing the 7 cauldrons in the shape of the Big Dipper, he couldn't help but understand. Thinking about this, Zhang Xiaohua did not hesitate. She took out the 7 8-trigrams purple gold furnaces and placed them in the grooves one by one according to what she saw in the alchemy room of the Misty School. When the last alchemy furnace was placed in the groove, a loud roar sounded from the 7 alchemy furnaces. Then, 7 rays of rainbow light rose from the alchemy furnaces and surged into the air. They formed a rainbow ball of light in the air. The ball of light spun a few times and became a bright dot. The light dot was extremely bright. Then, the 7 alchemy furnaces in the grooves flew into the air like bullets. There was another thunderous sound, and the bright dot disappeared. What appeared in the air was a huge 8 trigrams purple gold furnace. This 8 trigrams purple gold furnace was different from the previous 7 alchemy furnaces. An ancient and distant aura came from this furnace. It was even stronger than what Zhang Xiaohua felt when she was in the wasteland. Although Zhang Xiaohua had refined the 7 alchemy furnaces by dripping her blood on them, at this moment, Zhang Xiaohua could feel that these alchemy furnaces seemed to have an extremely weak connection with her mind. It was not as clear as before. Zhang Xiaohua frowned slightly. She used the spell to control the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace. The alchemy furnace whined and rumbled, but it did not fly down. At this moment, a small black dot flew over from the horizon. In a moment, it flew above the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace. Zhang Xiaohua looked and saw that it was the lid of the devil refining gourd that had flown away just now. That lid, then, slowly fell. With a soft clang, it covered the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace. Suddenly, the connection Zhang Xiaohua had with the alchemy furnaces disappeared without a trace. Please vote for me. Please vote for me. Please collect me. I'm only at the late stage of the qi refining stage because of my low level of cultivation. Compared to the others, I'm nothing. Zhang Xiaohua's heart calmed down when he thought of the people in the immortal mansion. It would be strange if there weren't any fortuitous encounters in the immortal mansion. The Dalan Temple's master Tiangang, the School of Fragrance's nun Shu Qing, and the School of Between the Clouds and the Water's Taoist master Haoyun wouldn't have to come out of seclusion and fight with the others for the immortal mansion. Suppressing the surprise of his cultivation advancement, Zhang Xiaohua sat down again. He placed his hand on the stone tablet and began to refine it. After a long time, an extremely thin layer of gold appeared on top of the tablet. Zhang Xiaohua's face paled. It seemed that the consumption of true qi was too great. At this time, a powerful consciousness came out of the tablet and directly attacked Zhang Xiaohua's Naiwen Palace. The consciousness was hidden so deeply and the attack was so fast that Zhang Xiaohua didn't have time to react. The consciousness attacked Zhang Xiaohua's Naiwen Palace and directly hit the essence of herbalism. Bang! The vibration in Zhang Xiaohua's Naiwen Palace made Zhang Xiaohua's face pale. The essence of herbalism wrapped in the golden essence of herbalism was shaken by the consciousness. It shook slightly and then stabilized. What is this? An old and weak voice faintly sounded in Zhang Xiaohua's heart. At the same time, Zhang Xiaohua's essence of herbalism slightly paused. With a flash of golden light, the dragon, tiger, and phoenix talismans formed a mysterious connection and slightly rotated. The rooster talisman, the three-legged golden crow talisman, and the rabbit talisman also emitted golden light and slightly moved. What is this? When the consciousness realized that it couldn't control Zhang Xiaohua's Naiwen palace, it wanted to escape. With a point of his finger, a ray of light flashed from the mansion guarding spirit steel. 10 thin strands flew into the air. Not long after, each strand was attached to an immortal artifact. Those immortal artifacts were all humming slightly. Unfortunately, in this immortal abode, they could only bow their heads and listen to orders. When they got close, Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and the 10 Dharma treasures disappeared in the blink of an eye. She put them all into her money bag. Even though the immortal mansion belonged to Zhang Xiaohua now, and the 10 Dharma artifacts would not run away even if they were placed in the palace, Zhang Xiaohua felt that he could only be at ease if he kept them in his money pouch and in his arms. Okay, I've put away the Dharma treasures. Now, it's time to chase away those robbers who came to my house. Zhang Xiaohua smiled as he held the mansion guarding spirit steel in his hand. He pointed at it, and a rainbow appeared under his feet and flew into the distance. Zhang Xiaohua didn't seem to do anything, but his figure flew along the rainbow into the distance. At the foot of Ya Mountain, in the immortal mansion, Master Changsheng of the Dalan Temple, Nun Jingyi of the Incense Cult, and Bai Yanqiu of Between the Clouds and the Water were all shocked when they saw that the immortal seniors of the various sects had been killed together, and reached another agreement. They ordered their disciples to guard the steps of the immortal mansion while they relied on their own abilities. Whoever climbed the steps first would enter the immortal mansion first. Please vote monthly, recommend, bookmark, and tip. Chapter 1181. When it comes to rushing up the stairs, the older the wiser. As soon as Peacock counted down to 3, Master Changsheng, Nun Jingyi, and Bai Yanqiu took off at the same time. Each of them performed the levitation technique and floated towards the stairs. They were no longer stingy with the little amount of genuine qi in their meridians. Just by using the levitation technique at the start, the difference in cultivation between the 3 of them was immediately obvious. Needless to say, Bai Yanqiu had only taken a few steps when she fell behind Master Changsheng and Nun Jingyi. At first, Master Changsheng and Nun Jingyi were running neck and neck with each other. They were about the same distance from the steps. However, when she was about 20 feet away from the stairs, Abbess Jingyi took a deep breath and silently used the incense sect's secret technique. Her figure suddenly sped up and she stepped onto the stairs before Grandmaster Changsheng. Just as Nun Jingyi's foot landed on the stairs, a loud rumbling sound came from the stairs. Nun Jingyi's heart sank. She looked up and immediately realized what was going on. On Yao Mountain, the previously tightly shut palace gate was now making a loud noise and slowly opening. Rays of light shot out from the immortal residence. Good, this is the style of an immortal residence. Nun Jingyi thought to herself. Her feet didn't stop at all and she was about to fly up the stairs. Unexpectedly, as soon as she stepped on the stairs, although she could still use Jinqi, she couldn't use levitation techniques anymore. Restriction, Nun Jingyi was stunned, but then she was overjoyed. Her incense sect's other techniques might be on par with the Dalan temples, but this light technique was a woman's specialty. She couldn't use levitation techniques here and could only use lightness techniques to climb up. How could she not leave Master Longevity behind? Without thinking, Nun Jingyi used her top-notch lightness technique. Like an old swallow, she flew up the stairs and towards the open palace gate. Seeing Nun Jingyi suddenly abandon levitation techniques, Master Longevity behind her was stunned. However, as soon as he stepped onto the stairs, he immediately understood. He used the Dalan Temple's secret technique, crossing the river on a reed, and followed closely behind Nun Jing-yi. Just as Nun Jing-yi expected, Master Longevity was inferior to her in terms of lightness techniques. It didn't take long for him to be left behind. Behind Master Longevity was, of course, Bai Yanqiu. At this moment, Bai Yanqiu was extremely depressed. Her levitation techniques were much slower than the two of them, but when she climbed up the stairs, her lightness techniques were slightly better than Master Longevity's. By the time she climbed halfway up the stairs, she was already behind Master Longevity. Seeing that Nun Jing-yi, who was at the front, was already 80% of the way up and was gradually approaching the palace gate, she became anxious. She exerted strength in her feet and floated over Master Longevity's head. Bai Yanqiu chased after him. With Master Longevity's cultivation, how could he not know? Just as Bai Yanqiu's figure leaped up, Master Longevity's sleeves flung back. A huge force surged from his sleeves and attacked Bai Yanqiu. When Bai Yanqiu saw this, she couldn't help but turn pale with fright. In a panic, she clapped her hands together to meet the huge force from the sleeves. With a bang, the two forces collided. Bai Yanqiu felt like her hands were clapping on cotton. The cotton had infinite strength, but it was all internal and couldn't be stimulated. Suddenly, just as Bai Yanqiu's strength was exhausted, another force came from Master Longevity's sleeves and collided with Bai Yanqiu's palm. Bai Yanqiu staggered and fell down the stairs. Ouch! Bai Yanqiu's face was ashen. They had just stepped onto the stairs when they heard a series of sharp screeches from within the divine abode. In mid-air, the colorful brilliance was replaced by a blood-red brilliance. This time, the brilliance was somewhat different from before. It was like a faint burning flame. The snowflakes floating in the sky suddenly turned into raindrops, dripping down bit by bit. Raindrops were supposed to sober people up, but when the raindrops fell on their faces, it actually made them crazy. Looking at the ground, there was already blood seeping into the ground. And, as more blood seeped in, the originally ordinary soil gradually emitted wisps of black gas. The black gas was very thin and couldn't be seen clearly. Now that it was night time, no one could sense it. This black gas was also very strange. It only extended a few inches out of the soil and didn't spread or condense. In the time it took to smoke a cigarette, the disciples of the three immortal sects and the righteous alliance who were qualified to go up the stairs had all gone up. The disciples guarding the bottom of the stairs slackened and prepared to retreat a little. According to the orders of the sect leaders, they retreated to the stairs. At this moment, a knife light flashed from the disciple between the clouds and the water. The target of the knife was the Dalan Temple disciple. The Dalan Temple disciple was caught off guard and a deep cut was made under his armpit. Blood dripped down, dripping into the black gas at his feet. The black gas absorbed the blood and suddenly expanded, seeping into the disciple's blood vessels. Instantly, the Dalan Temple disciple's face froze. Without another word, he raised the cudgel in his hand and struck the disciple between the clouds and the water. Of course, the disciple between the clouds and the water was prepared and met the attack with his pedao. After a few rounds, the disciple between the clouds and the water was no match for the Dalan Temple disciple. With a poochie sound, the disciple's head was smashed by the Dalan Temple's cudgel. His body fell to the ground, surrounded by a formless black gas. Not long after, all his blood was sucked dry. Monk Na! How dare you beat my junior brother to death? The other disciples between the clouds and the water could not take it anymore. With weapons in hand, they attacked the Dalan Temple monk. The Dalan Temple monk did not say a word. With a wave of his cudgel, he struck another disciple between the clouds and the water. Thus, the disciples between the clouds and the water and the Dalan Temple disciples fought each other. Not long after, the disciples of the incense cult and the alliance of the righteous Tao joined in. In an instant, the scene at the bottom of the steps was chaotic. Everyone was crazily killing each other, regardless of whether they were from the three immortal sects or other sects of the pugilistic world. Of course, in the midst of the chaos, there were also many strong disciples who took the time to step onto the steps and head straight for the immortal mansion on Yao Mountain. Jing Yi was the first to finish the steps. She turned back to look at Master Longevity and Bai Yanqiu, who had only reached 70% of the steps. Her lips curled into a cold smile. Then, she raised her head and quickly glanced at the incomparably huge palace gate. When she looked inside again, there was only emptiness. She could not see anything. Behind the palace gate, there shouldn't be anything powerful. Jing Yi hesitated for a moment, then regretted it. She had already come this far and had finally reached the palace gate. How could she still hesitate? Even if the palace gate was a dragon's lair or a tiger's den, could she not go in? Immediately, Jing Yi drew a soft sword from her waist. Her figure leapt, and she rushed into the empty palace gate. Needless to say, after entering the palace gate, Jing Yi was just like Zhang Xiaohua. She was shocked by the incomparably huge palace in the distance. Jing Yi Shirtai was the leader of the incense sect's immortal Dao inheritance. She wasn't someone that a country bumpkin like Zhang Xiaohua could compare to. She was shocked and thought about the origin of the immortal abode. She wondered if there was anything in the immortal abode that could be of great use to the incense sect's immortal abode. When she came back to her senses, she immediately leapt up and stepped on the purple jade stone passage. A huge force suddenly appeared, and Jing Yi's figure was thrown back into the air. What kind of restriction is this? Nun Jing Yi was slightly taken aback. She looked left and right, then quickly moved to the left. Just like Zhang Xiaohua, Nun Jing Yi looked at the stagnant water with slight ripples. How could she not know the danger? She didn't dare to cross it carelessly and hurriedly ran to the blue jade stone passage. Who would have thought that the force here was also extremely strong? Abbess Jing Yi suddenly understood and didn't stop. She didn't look at the few colors in the middle and directly ran to the outermost black and white jade stone passage. It had to be said that in this aspect, Zhang Xiaohua was far inferior to Jing Yi. When Jing Yi ran to the black and white passage, Master Changsheng and Bai Yanqiu also went up the stairs. However, they did not have to worry about the restriction of the palace gate. They rushed in directly. At the same time, the two of them were also shocked by the palace in the distance. This. Bai Yanqiu groaned and turned to look at Master Changsheng. Master Changsheng also seemed to be on guard. He turned to look at Bai Yanqiu. When their gazes met, they both looked away. Together, they looked at the purple jade stone passage. Please vote monthly, recommend, bookmark, and tip. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. And since the screen of light was black, it should be the lowest level as well. Most likely, it was also the one she could enter. Furthermore, Ren Xiaoyao of the Tenryu sect had already entered before, but his corpse wasn't here. If he hadn't fallen into the water beside the jade passage, then he must have entered this black screen of light. Since Ren Xiaoyao was fine, how could Nun Jing Yi have a problem? Therefore, the software in Nun Jing Yi's hand trembled slightly, and she still stepped into the palace. First, she was attracted by the incomparably shocking scene of heaven and earth. Then, she fervently looked at the high and mighty throne in the middle of the palace. There's no need to ask. This throne must be the center of Immortal Mansion. If I can sit on it, I'll definitely know the secrets of Immortal Mansion like the back of my hand. As for the throne, how do I get to it? Nun Jing Yi urged the black cloud under her feet to the place closest to the throne. She looked at the faint red cloud next to her and hesitated. She was in the air below her feet. If she couldn't stay on the faint red cloud, she might fall off the cloud. If she really fell from such a high place, there would be nothing left of her. Of course, Jing Yi was no longer able to determine whether or not there was an illusory array in the hall. She also knew that even if there was an illusory array, Yao Mountain was right beneath the hall. However, the immortal Tao had countless methods to move a person from the illusory array to the air outside of Yao Mountain. Although she had casually jumped off Yao Mountain, it was very likely that she would fall outside of Yao Mountain. After thinking for a moment, Nun Jingyi put away her soft sword and took out a small sword with a thin transparent thread. She casually waved it, and the small sword flew toward the red cloud next to her. However, the red cloud seemed to be transparent, and Nun Jingyi's small sword didn't exert any force. It simply sliced through the air and flew back into Nun Jingyi's hand. Nun Jingyi's brows furrowed even tighter. She looked at the huge throne in the distance, which seemed to be the closest to her. She estimated the thin thread in her hand and flicked her wrist. The small sword flew over with a whoosh, but the high and lofty throne in the center was like the moon in the mirror or a flower in the water. The small sword sliced through the air above the throne and still fell. Nun Jingyi wasn't surprised by this. After thinking for a moment, she suddenly turned her head. She seemed to have sensed the footsteps of Master Longevity and the others outside the palace. Then, she clenched her teeth and leaped up, about to leap onto the faint red cloud. However, as soon as she moved, the faint black cloud rose with her. Just as Nun Jingyi's figure was about to approach the faint red cloud, a weak but unparalleled force appeared and blocked her to the side. That faint black cloud didn't leave the bottom of her feet for even a moment. This. Nun Jingyi was stunned. Just now, she had already prepared for the worst, but she had forgotten the simplest thing. This color was different, but it was completely different. She didn't have the slightest chance to practice it. Nun Jingyi was about to make another move when she saw some brilliance flickering in the distance. Master Longevity and Bai Yanqiu each stepped on a faint white cloud and slowly flew over. Alas! Seeing this, Nun Jingyi sighed in her heart. She knew, her advantage of being the first to enter Immortal Mansion had disappeared, and she hadn't discovered anything. What about Ren Xiaoyao of the Tenryu sect? Nun Jingyi looked at the faint black light screen in the distance and couldn't help but hesitate. She wanted to go in and take a look, but she was afraid that Master Longevity and Bai Yanqiu would do something and discover the secret of the throne in the center. If she could stay here, she might have a chance. If she left, then she definitely wouldn't be able to get anything. Ba, Nun Jingyi, is this the center of Immortal Mansion? Obviously, Master Longevity was also attracted by the throne. Looking at the strange scenery under his feet and sighing about the wonders of the immortal Tao, he immediately urged the white cloud under his feet to come to the closest place to the throne. At this time, although the three of them were far away, Nun Jingyi could hear Master Longevity's words clearly. Yes, Master, this should be the center of Immortal Mansion. If we can get this throne, I'm afraid Immortal Mansion will be in our pockets. Nun Jingyi said calmly, by the way, may I ask Master, on the way here, did you see Ren Xiaoyao of the Tenryu sect? Master Longevity shook his head and replied, no, there was no trace of young benefactor Ren along the way. Nun Jingyi, could it be that there's some kind of restriction here, that we can't pass? Bai Yanqiu followed behind Master Longevity and asked in shock. If it wasn't for some kind of restriction, would I wait here for you? Nun Jingyi's anger flared up in an instant. Hearing Nun Jingyi's unfriendly tone, the corners of Bai Yanqiu's eyes twitched. He turned his head to look at the central throne facing him, and ignored Nun Jingyi. Nun Jingyi, if there's anything strange here, please tell me. Since we've come here together, before we find a way to break the restriction, it's better for us to work together, Master Longevity said in a deep voice. Don't you think so, Bai Zhangmen? Yes, I've been following behind Master all this time. Master, I'm already very satisfied that you've tolerated me. If I discover anything, I'll definitely tell you. Bai Yanqiu said with a smile. Sigh. Nun Jingyi let out a long sigh. She looked at the throne and said with a bitter smile, I've only just arrived here. Before I could do anything, Master and Bai Zhangmen arrived. I was even a little ahead of time, but I didn't even have the slightest advantage. Master Longevity put his palms together and stood quietly. He didn't look at the throne, but at the many little ants around Ya Mountain. It wasn't clear whether he was thinking about Nun Jingyi's words or looking for a way to get close to the throne. Bai Yanqiu couldn't help but whisper, Master, if you don't do anything, I would like to try. Master Longevity seemed to have woken up from a dream. He looked up at Bai Yanqiu and said kindly, if Bai Zhangmen wants to do it, you can. I don't have any tricks up my sleeve, otherwise I'd also give it a try. Then I'll be rude. Bai Yanqiu stepped forward, and the white cloud under her feet floated forward for a while. She passed by Master Longevity and raised her hand. In her palm was the treasure of her Shindao sect, the demon refining gourd. Oh, this is bad. I forgot, you can't use magic tools outside the palace, but that doesn't mean you can't use them inside the palace. Nun Jingyi was secretly regretting. When she entered the palace, she still followed her previous idea. As long as it was immortal methods, this immortal mansion would be restricted. Only martial arts methods could be used. Now that she saw Bai Yanqiu take out the demon refining gourd, she couldn't help but realize. Please cast a monthly vote, please cast a recommendation vote, please collect, please tip, thank you. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.